you knew that there was a live feed in there, and the whole world was watching this live feed. So you knew every time you went on, you've got to do this right. One, you've got to do it right because the world's media is looking at you. But two, you've got to do it right for the boss. We've got to do this for the boss. And the 12 of us who were on the funeral, before we stepped off, we said, we've got to do this right.
Hello and welcome to the Menfulness podcast. A happy new year to you. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sam Watling, and we are searching for what's going on with men and their mental health. How can we get better at having those tough conversations and trying to become more self-aware and authentic in our day-to-day lives? Today we've got Mark Sullivan with us, and he'll be talking about his multiple careers, including how the army has played a huge part in his whole life. But first of all, I wanted to just say I hope that you've had the best Christmas that you could. It's definitely a strange time of year, and there's lots of expectations and overwhelm and missing people that should be there. And for me, it's definitely come at the right time. It's meant a little bit of time off work for me, as I've found myself in a bit of a rough patch. Just generally, I've realised, I think that I've been knocked off my game by a bit of burnout and the realisation that I'm quite often just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour and overcompensating for that imposter in me that's telling me that I'm about to let somebody down. And I found myself in a position where I'm not talking as much as I usually do because I'm distracted by all the roles that I think I'm supposed to play, trying to be the best partner or parent, even trustee at Menfulness. I see myself as the one that people are supposed to come to, and I want to be useful and I want to help, not the one reaching out and asking for help. So that must change, and we must remember the first rule of Menfulness, right? Speak up, and I think that's it. I've lost track of that a little bit. So I want to get my healthy habits back too. I know that when I get up early and I run and I drink water and I breathe deep and I stay present, that I am in a better place to deal with all the other stuff that the world throws at me. So if this Christmas was tough for you, then I see you, and I hope that together we can look to this new year to find a little more peace, acceptance. Let us know. What is there going on in your life that you could take control of and make a immediate and meaningful change for you? I'd love to hear it. So now for Mark Sullivan. Mark is an army veteran turned personal trainer turned university lecturer. His path through the army is a fascinating one, and it eventually leads to a leading role in the TV series Lad's Army, and a career-defining moment or two as part of the Queen's Bodyguard for Her Majesty's funeral and the King's Bodyguard for His Majesty's coronation. This conversation is full of insight on life, the fitness, the importance of discipline, integrity, and looking after other people. Mark may well now be retired, but he's still running marathons. He's still working for the Sovereign. His energy, his relentless service, it's an inspiration for me, and I hope it is for you too. Let us know what you think after this chat. Please like, share, let people know if you enjoy it. Here he is. It's Mark Sullivan. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us, mate.
That's all right.
It's lovely to have you in the house. And how are you today? You all right?
Today is a good day, yeah.
Good. And you're someone who was sort of pointed to me by Jack, our chairman, and he sort of said, you need to speak to Mark. This guy's got a real story. And this was shortly after the Queen's funeral.
Yep.
And we'll get on to how you had a really remarkable part to play in that day. And so, but before we do, I wonder if you'd be happy to give us a little bit of background about you. What's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Name's Mark Sullivan. I'm 65 years old. I'm 66 next month. I was born in Shorncliffe in Kent. I was actually born in the military hospital, which, according to my father, was then pulled down within minutes of me being born, so they would never have a chance of having anyone else again. my father was in the forces, so travelled around quite a lot as a child, predominantly in the southeast because he was in the Guards. Couple of times, 2 years in Germany when I was a very young child, and 2 years in Hong Kong, but most of the rest of the time was down south or in London. 18 years of age, joined the army, joined the regular army, did 22 years with the regular army, left, and did a further 12 with the reserves, whilst also lecturing at York St John University.
I see. So you did both for a while.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, because the reserves, because it's one weekend a month, you could fit that in around the university work. What I had to do was, whenever there was a 2-week course to go on, which would happen once a year, the university, because they were an employee that would support the military, would give you half of those 2 weeks as unpaid leave. The rest of it you had to take as paid leave.
Wow. And is the reserves a voluntary force? Are you still paid for your time in it?
Yeah, you're paid for your time.
Right.
So if you did a weekend, you'd have 2.5 days pay because you're coming on a Friday and finish. You'd get a 2-week course, you'd get paid. If you fulfilled all your training requirements, which was 27 days as a minimum, and the camps and the training, they would then give you a tax-free bounty as well. Right. So a lot of people I know who were in the reserves, one, they do it because they enjoy it, but two, they use the money from it to pay for a holiday each year, that sort of thing. So it goes into a separate account so they can see what they've used and they can use it as holiday funds.
And do you keep the rank that you had throughout, and are you able to sort of continue your career in that respect? Or?
When I joined the reserves, I'd left the regular army as a warrant officer class 1, joined the reserves, and they said, look, because of where we are, we can only give you 4 years because of your age at the time, and we can only make you a warrant officer class 2. You'll never be a warrant officer class 1. I said, yeah, that's fine. And then within 2 years, they changed the rules so I could stay on a bit longer. Right. So I ended up doing 12 years. And they also changed the system, and I ended up as a warrant officer class 1 again. Right. So I managed to get it twice, which is a bit odd. And my last 2 years were actually based in Strensel, where I went back to what I'd been doing for years in the regular military, which was training initial recruits in the reserve forces.
Right, training them from a fitness perspective.
No. Right. I was not a physical training instructor in the military.
Right, I see.
Because one of the requirements for any physical training instructor is you have to be able to swim, and I swim like a brick, so I was never going to be a PTI. Right. So I was a drill instructor, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear warfare instructor, a skill at arms instructor, and field craft and tactics. Right.
And did you, when you got in, so at the young age of 18, did you know that were these things that you were already interested in and knew you wanted, or did you find your way into those things?
No. It was weird. When I joined the military at 18, I'd gone through school and everything else, and obviously school was a bit odd because every 2 years we moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I was in Hong Kong just starting my O-levels. It's that long ago. Yeah, GCSEs, never heard of GCSEs. And I was just getting into my O-levels, and I loved history. Right. And we were doing history, and we were just about to get to the French Revolution. And my favourite bit of history was, and still is, the French Revolution. Arrived in UK, go to school in Caterham in Surrey, pick up history. They've just finished the French Revolution because they're doing a different exam board. Right. So I didn't cover it at all when I was in school. Luckily, I had the interest.
If we talk about your early life, maybe come back to when you joined up, because that must have been really rough, just having to move around so much. Was your schooling within the forces? Were you schooled by...
Right. In Hong Kong, it was a military school.
Right.
Which, and that's... It's not taught by the military. It's a military school, civilian teachers and everything else, but it's within a military structure, so the military help organise it. But it's all civilian teachers. Right. It's normal exam boards, etc., etc. But it basically, did I find it tough? No, because it's what you had.
Yeah,
the only thing I think I gained life experience, because you're coming from the military background. The one thing you're good at is making friends, because you've got to make friends quickly, because in 2 years you're going to make some new friends. Right. So you get really good at interpersonal relationships. What suffered and I freely admit this, was my education.
Yeah.
And I don't mean overall life education, because my life education was superb, but actual academic education was probably suffering because of it. Yeah. So I was doing O-levels and A-levels. I picked up about 6 or 7 O-levels. I can't remember now exactly, it's that long ago. Yeah. I did 3 A-levels, and I got an O-level pass in one of them and failed the other 2.
Right. But some of this was because you were missing...
I was missing bits,
yeah.
And academically maybe I struggled a bit more. Certainly when you look back on it, I think, yeah, academically I did. So academically, not so good. Life experience, superb.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of military families will send their children to boarding school.
Right.
And I know there's been a recent debate about, we should get rid of boarding schools. Boarding schools are only for people who are rich. They're not. Most boarding schools are not for rich people. A lot of military families will send their children to boarding school. They will have an allowance to help them, because they've decided to do that, because that means the child stays in one school while the parent's moving around.
Yeah.
I was asked by my father if I wanted that, just as we were due to go to Hong Kong. And he said, you can go to the Duke of York's military school, which is in Dover, or you can come to Hong Kong. Yeah. Well, that took about 5 seconds to decide.
How old were you at that point then?
I was 11, coming up to 12. So I just thought, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to Hong Kong, aren't I?
Brilliant.
So I went to Hong Kong. I would have probably got a better academic education if I'd stayed at the Duke of York's military school. Yeah. But I wouldn't have had that life experience. Other than they would have put me on a plane to come out on holidays, and I would have had to fly on a plane from UK to Hong Kong on my own. Yeah. And back again. Yeah. But I think overall, the life experience helps you in life more than the academic stuff.
And I think it's really fascinating that you were given that choice. You know, that it wasn't just this is what you're doing. You're 11 years old, you do as you're told. It was what do you want to do?
Yeah,
and you've
it was
got
unusual.
Agency.
I mean, I was quite surprised that my father offered me the choice. Yeah. It was unusual. Normally it was like, we're doing that. Yeah. And I think this was my father thinking, let's be nice. Let's get him back into the grammar system, because in Hong Kong there won't be a grammar school and a comprehensive. There'll be one, and that's it. So he said, "Do you want to?" And I went, "No, I'm going to Hong Kong. I don't care about the other stuff. I'm off. Hong Kong, fabulous." I did Duke of Edinburgh's award there, so got into the new territories. It was brilliant. I mean, my father. It was the first time while I was in Hong Kong. The first time I consciously remember my father lying to me. He and his brother, who was also serving in the army at the time, they took me to a girly bar. I was 13 and a half. And when we walked into this topless girly bar, this is when my father lied to me. He said, "Don't worry, when you've seen one pair, you've seen them all." He lied. And at 13, I didn't think he was lying. But I now know, obviously, with life experience, that he lied. He also did say, he said, "Whatever you do, don't tell your mum where you've been." Okay.
Did you ever?
No.
Oh, well done.
Never.
Well done. Wow. So yeah, as you say, you had in your mind a richer, more varied life experience.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's really interesting to hear you say that actually you got better at making friends, because the first thing that came to my mind was, oh God, how do you make friends when you've only got 2 years, and how do you... But actually you do it quicker and more effectively. It's
weird. The military people, or military children, all do, automatically. Just walk in, do. I arrived in Caterham, and they didn't, because they were all from primary school since they were 5 and so on. So it was a really odd situation where I was coming in, doing what we normally do as military families, and they were looking at me like, "Who are you?
Right?
What are you doing here? We've known each other since we were 5. What? You're like an interloper."
Yeah.
So it took a bit longer. There, because it wasn't a military type environment.
Yes.
So there was only a few of us in there compared to where most military families. So it was an odd one in Caterham, but because we were there for 4 years. Because my parents were getting divorced and my father was moving on with his military career. That enabled me to get over that initial hump of they're not talking to you because they've been together since they were 5 and you've just jumped in.
Right.
So that took a bit of, this is this is not like normal.
Yeah.
And then you go, no, it's okay, it's fine, because there'll be a couple of them in there. You get talking to them, and it's fine. So that helped.
Yeah.
But certainly on a 2-year place, you make friends quick, because within 6 months, some of them are probably gone, and there'll be another one coming in, and so on.
Amazing. And did your father have quite a long and sort of decorated career in the army then? Is that why he did so much travelling?
My father joined the army in 1939 when he was 14 as a drummer boy with the Irish Guards.
Wow.
He was a sea cadet, and his father said, "You're going into the army, we know somebody," so he joined the Irish Guards at 14. He served right away through World War II. He served until 1976 as a regular officer. He reached the rank of major, so he worked his way up to Warrant Officer Class 1, and then got commissioned, became a major. He then, from 76 to 86, he worked as a retired army officer in Manchester in the recruiting office. So he actually signed me on and signed a few other hundreds and thousands of people on during his career. So he finally finished with the army in 86 and had joined in 1939.
And watched you
and
was,
I joined.
Was he still there while you
I
joined?
joined in 76. He signed me on.
Wow.
I was at Ashford as an instructor, and he came down to watch one of the pass-out parades that I was taking.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It was different, yeah.
Yeah. Full circle. At what point did you think this is the life for me, or was it just bred into you because of your lifestyle?
It wasn't either. I've always thought about this since I joined or since I've left and so on. Did I ever consciously decide to join the army? I'm not sure I consciously ever did.
Right.
But I'm also not sure I consciously ever thought that I was going to be doing anything else.
Yeah.
It was almost... My father never said, "You're joining up."
Yeah.
My mother never said, "You're going to join the army." I just think, most children, they go through life and they go, "Oh, you want to be a fireman, you want to be a train driver," and so on. I just always consciously or always remember playing at soldiers, and then ended up joining.
Yeah.
It wasn't a conscious decision of I must join.
But I wonder if that's because if you remember as far back as you can remember, you were travelling.
I think there might be.
And you'll have lived on bases and seen.
Yeah.
You were part of that lifestyle. From
I
the
think
very
that
beginning.
probably was a huge part of it. That there was nothing else.
Yeah.
And I went to a careers office in London, and they said, the officer there said, "Have you had any military experience?" And well, no, other than schools. No, I haven't. So while I was still at school doing my A-levels, and this is another reason I think my A-levels suffered, they said, "Join the Army Reserves," or as it was then, the Territorial Army, to get some military experience.
How old were you at that point then?
I was 17. So I joined the Territorial Army in 74, 75. So served about 18 months with them, and then joined the regular army.
So it just gets you ready for that.
It gets me ready. It meant that I was doing camps and weekends and so on, and I'm sure I should have been sat at home revising for the A-levels. So again, I think the military didn't help my A-levels.
Yeah.
But it meant that when I joined the regular army, we had 8 weeks of recruit training. The first 4 weeks of that, I'd already done it. With the reserves. So I had the easiest time ever. I mean, one of the lads in my intake wanted to leave, and the comment from the officer was, "Be like Sullivan. He's having a great time." And I'm thinking, yeah, because I'd done it already.
Yeah.
It made it easy, and it meant that I could then help others. But it meant, whereas others were sat at night reading and revising, I didn't need to revise it because I'd done it.
Yeah.
So it meant half of my recruit training was really easy.
Yeah.
That meant by the time the second half started, I'd already got enough that the second half wasn't going to be hard anyway.
Yeah, you were ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine for some people, as well as the study and training, there's the shock to the system, the culture shock of going from civilian life into, this is not a job. This is not a job.
Yes.
You might think, "Oh, I like the sound of that. I like the sound of running around. I like the sound of being armed. I want to go and fight for my country." All of the glamour and drama and excitement and danger that I can imagine really attracts a lot of blokes. But then the reality of it is, you don't come home. You spend so much time there that you just, it becomes who you are.
I mean, the reserves from that point of view was good preparation, because I'd literally had 2 weeks away running around learning how to be a soldier.
Yeah.
So when I went to do that again for 8 weeks, well, I'd already done it. So I knew what it was going to be like. It was just going to be a longer version of the 2 weeks.
Yes.
So it's fine.
And you knew what
Yeah, I knew what end of the rifle was which. I knew how to make a bed. I knew how to make a bed block.
Hospital corners.
I knew how to iron my kit. Yeah, I knew how to do hospital corners. I knew all of that.
Yeah.
So it was like, right, here's your kit. Oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing with this.
Yeah.
To the point, stupid things like we used to have a peak cap. Thankfully, we don't anymore. And they would teach you how to clean it. So you'd put some polish on it, and little circles and everything else. And I'm sat there doing that for the first night and thought, no, I can't be doing with this anymore. I'll do the old trick that I learned with the reserves. Shaving foam spray, wipe it over, it's done.
Looks right.
So I then just dusted it off. And about 2 weeks into the recruit training, the instructor comes in and your hat's on the end of the bed to be inspected. And he picked it up and he went, Sullivan, your hat. And I thought, he's gonna notice I haven't cleaned it. He said, no more polish on the peak, it's spot on. I hadn't polished it for about 10 days. All I'd done was dusted it off each day. It was just, okay.
You knew all the tricks.
Yeah. So it meant it was simple. And it did mean, therefore, you got a bit more time to help somebody who was struggling a bit more.
Yeah.
To just go, right, come here. You can't iron those. I'll iron them for you because you're ironing about 15 creases in them when you should only have one.
Yeah.
I'll iron those and you do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on.
I spent a bit of time in the Air Cadets, a lot of years in the Air Cadets. And so it interests me to talk a bit about drill and about uniform and that sort of thing, if you're happy to do that. Because I really enjoyed it, and I still can't quite put my finger on what that was about, layer of polish, tiny amount of water, layer of polish, get them looking shiny, one crease, tight hospital corners, drill in time, everything where it's meant to be. There's something that is hard to define about the satisfaction of things being just so, isn't there? I don't know what that is. Is that why is drill so important? Why is uniform so important?
I joined the intelligence corps. I joined a contradiction in terms. It's an oxymoron, military intelligence. And my first couple of years, and I went through my recruit training, and my first couple of years I went to Northern Ireland. I then got lucky enough, I got to Cyprus, and I went to Aldershot, and I was working in Aldershot, and I was doing security. And I'd always wanted to go back to be an instructor at the depot. And I asked, and they sent me on the drill course. I said, I want to be a drill instructor. Sent me on the drill course. And you say, why is drill there is so much emphasis on drill? You open the drill manual, and the first lines in the drill manual are, drill is the basis of all teamwork. Well, the military is based around working together as a team.
Yeah.
So drill is the start of that.
I see.
It's the fact that you all get together with this common aim of, look, this may be stupid, but we're all going to be doing this together. And when we get it right, are we on point? Because we've got it right. And we all go, ooh, you stand a little taller, you feel a little prouder. And it's that teamwork. Straight away, you're building teams. And you're building a team in a nice environment because you're just on a drill square, you're just marching around, you're not getting muddy and dirty and everything else. You're building that teamwork so that you can then take that teamwork somewhere else, and it can get muddy because it's still working as a team. It's also within the same drill manual, it says it's the basis of teamwork and the introduction of discipline to react to a word. So when you shout turn, you all turn. So that means when you're in the middle of a wood and somebody is opening fire on you and you shout down, you go down. Instead of turning around and going, what do you mean? You do it automatically. So you're getting used to instantaneously obeying a command whilst working together as a team. And drill is exactly that. Now, the intelligence corps that I was part of don't do drill. We are not into military. I mean, I joined the intelligence corps, and in my 22 years, half my time I wasn't in uniform. I was in a suit or a jacket and tie and things like this. So we do a lot more uniform now, than certainly when I was in. What me doing drill was like, you like this stuff? You're in the intelligence corps. Why do you like this? And
but everyone must have done it, presumably.
Oh yeah,
so
you all have to do it in recruit training.
And
you all have to do it as part of a promotion course.
Yes.
But I was one of those weird ones that with my hat on, where I actually quite liked doing it.
I quite liked
because I was good at it.
Yeah.
So it was an oddity, but it is that teamwork, and you saw that when you were getting people ready for parades, you could see them spot on. I mean, it's that basic psychological thing of, if they get them right, they're really good. We had a recruit intake, and they would all get issued the kit and everything else, and it's fine. This one recruit intake worked so well together that one morning they'd all gone out and they'd all bought drill boots, ammunition boots with 13 studs in them. The whole intake. They didn't have to because they had boots, but they'd all bought them so they could sound better and they could sound together. And we brought them on, and it was like, wow, they've all got them. Yeah. And it was that teamwork of they want to work together. Yeah. This is they are just going to do whatever we need. They will do and more.
It's like a shared subconscious.
It is exactly that.
I imagine it like, when you see a group of birds all take off at the same time in the same direction, and
it works.
It's without words.
Yeah, and that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I think you're right with the air cadets and so on, and with the cadets, because I spent some time with the army cadets. They like that drill because it gives them that sense of purpose, that sense of discipline, that sense of teamwork. Yeah, straight away.
Yeah. And it's almost a dance.
It is.
When you watch a dance
group
in perfect time, that's when it looks its absolute best.
You watch Troop in the Colour each year. It is a dance choreographed by the Sergeant Major and gone in slow and quick and everything else, and they're turning, but they all turn together and they all stop together and they move together, all the knees at the same height, and it is. It's like watching Strictly Come Dancing for the military.
Yeah, well, we went to the Edinburgh Tattoo, and that just, that's just hours of it. Look, on this ridiculous scale. It just shows it can be scaled up once people are focused. They're one tiny cog in a huge wheel, and I suppose that kind of represents the army in some way, doesn't it? Everybody is important, nobody forgotten, but also a very small part of a much bigger...
One person gets it wrong, it'll stand out. Yeah. You all get it right. I mean, the perfect one of that is one of the rehearsals, and I know it's jumping ahead, one of the rehearsals we did for the coronation was at an RAF base, RAF Odium, and that was the first time you realise how big it was, because it was an RAF base. You could use the runways.
So you had a massive space.
So massive space and massive open space, which you will never see in London because of all the buildings. And we were stood right at the back of this whole parade, and there was like 4,500 to 5,000 blokes on parade. And you looked across the airfield, and all you could see was all these blokes lined up, and somebody shouted, and they all stepped off together. And you thought, this is quite big, this. Yeah. And again, that one of them had messed up. You would have spotted it. But there were 5,000 all going together.
Just from an audio perspective, it takes longer for the orders to reach you at the back of that.
Because what they did for the coronation, they cued the bands. Right. All the drummers, all the bass drummers who keep the beat, were cued with an earpiece to a timer.
Incredible.
So that when they shouted Quick March, all the bass drummers went together. So every band was playing the same piece of music at the same time. Yeah. So no delay. Normally on big parades, the first half will be in one step, the second and so on. Yeah. This lot, they were all in the same step because all the bands kicked off together.
That's awesome.
It's really clever. Yeah. And it's because of modern technology, but it worked a treat.
Even with modern technology, organising something at that sort of scale,
back to that choreography.
Yeah. Okay, so we're definitely going to talk about the coronation. But let's talk. We were talking a bit. You mentioned a few of the places you'd been in, a few of the jobs that you'd done while you were in. So if we can talk about, you said military intelligence. You hear that a lot. What is it that you were doing? Can you tell us?
My trade had two bits to it. I was an operator, intelligence and security. Right. So I could either do an intelligence posting, or a security posting. The intelligence postings, basically, you're looking to try and tell the commander what's over the hill coming at him.
I see.
So on an exercise, we would play the enemy. Obviously, when I was there, it was the Cold War, so we were playing the Warsaw Pact. So we would be the Warsaw Pact. So we'd be telling the commander, right, this is coming over, or if you see this, it'll be a combat indicator that that's coming over the hill at you, or they're coming to the left or the right or wherever.
So you were making predictions and
you'd brief the
practicing potential attacks.
Yes, defense. You say to him, if you see this piece of equipment, it's what you would call a signature equipment for a headquarters of this type of unit, which means you're going to be facing this.
And you were getting that information from what?
We had books of Warsaw Pact tactics, books of recognition equipment. So the big thing they used to teach in the Cold War in Germany for the UK forces and the American forces and so on was recognition of Warsaw Pact equipment. So they knew if they could recognise a tank or a gun or so on, it was what type of tank, what type of gun and so on. Yeah. So that's what we did on the intelligence side. Yeah. Brief the commander so that he could take what he had and put it in the right place. Yeah. Because even back in the Cold War, the British military wasn't as big as the Warsaw Pact, so we had to put whatever we did have in the right place.
Of course, yeah.
More so now because we've got even less.
Yeah. So I guess technology will be picked up a lot, will it?
What, as regards being able to recognise the stuff?
Well, yeah, and AI, and are they as swanky as you imagine they should be? Aren't the military always decades ahead of the rest of us?
Yeah. The problem is you've still got to put a bloke on the ground at some point.
Of course, yeah.
And that we don't seem to have at the moment. We don't have that much.
Right.
I mean, was it somebody was telling me that within the next 2 years, maybe less, Switzerland, which is a neutral country, will have more tanks than the British Army do.
Wow.
And when you consider that we're supposedly part of NATO, that's quite a telling statement. But yeah, so the intelligence was making the commander, giving the commander the best information he could so he knew where to put his forces.
Yeah.
The security side of it was stopping the people over the hill finding out what we were doing.
All right.
So part of the security role was to stop them finding it. So that was making sure that if we left a location, we didn't leave documents behind. Yeah. They were all burnt or shredded or taken with us and so on. If we had a camp, we made sure the camp had the right height fence, the right sort of security doors on the armories. Yeah. The inspections were done. The classified documents were looked after. And then if things got missing, we then had to investigate to find out. We never wanted to find out who did it. It was more a case of how did something happen so that we can then prevent that happening again.
Yeah, and where's it gone? Has it landed in
if you've lost a document, that's really bad. Yeah. But what we really want to know is how did that happen so we can stop it happening the next time. Yeah. When we do that, we're probably going to find out who did it. Yeah. But our big concern is how.
So you were investigators,
we were investigators. Well, we were investigators, advisors. So we would come into the commander and say, right, what do you need to look at? You need to protect this. Yeah. Our advice is the best way to protect this is here, 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 and here. Yeah. Right, go ahead. Or come into a unit and say, right, what are you worried about? You've just arrived in a new area. Yeah. You don't know the area. We will now brief you on what the area is, what the concerns to have, and so on. Yeah. And then that would be the security side of it was the one I tended to do more. Yeah. After I'd been at our depot teaching for 3.5 years as the recruit instructor, where I taught drill, then nuclear, biological and chemical warfare, and then fieldcraft and tactics. Whenever I was posted from then onwards, predominantly security tours, although one intelligence tour in Northern Ireland, I was also doing training. Yeah. Because I'd done all of that at the depot, it was like, well, you're an obvious trainer, so you're doing training as well.
And were you happy with that?
Presumably,
you're in the thick of it, and all of a sudden, you've got all the knowledge that you need to then be the one telling everybody else how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the training thing was, we didn't have that many people going through our training depot as instructors. Yeah. So therefore, it was almost a given that wherever you went after this, you were going to be using those training skills to train. Yeah, and you had the qualifications to be able to take them and so on.
Were you still getting involved in anything in the excitement of it?
Yeah. I mean, my first posting after the depot, I went to Hong Kong. So I'd done Cyprus as a young corporal in an intelligence unit. I did Aldershot security, where we managed to investigate some lost documents and found the person who'd done it was actually already dead. And therefore, the reason the documents were missing was because he died. He'd shredded the documents, correctly destroyed them, died before he could cross them out of the documents book. So therefore, they still on paper existed because they weren't crossed off. But we could prove that he had destroyed them. It was one of those accidents.
They were important documents, though, were they?
No, they were just normal classified documents. So did that. I then went to Ashford for 3.5 years. My posting after that was Hong Kong, where I ran a vetting unit looking at soldiers wanted to marry local civilians, like Chinese, Filipinos, and so on, and also vetting of local military personnel. I then took over as the company sergeant major there, and I was the security officer there in Hong Kong. But at the same time, I was also doing the training. So I would do their annual training tests. I would take them on the ranges. I did a couple of drill parades because, well, you're a drill instructor. You're doing that.
So you were carrying out a similar role and living a similar life than you like you would on an army base over here?
Oh yeah,
it was just in
Hong Kong.
Different place.
Yeah,
right.
It was just in Hong Kong.
Was there much work with those countries while you were in them? Crossover
with Hong Kong, because we had, certainly on the vetting side, I liaised with the Royal Hong Kong Police and worked with the Royal Hong Kong Police quite a lot. Once I was the company sergeant major and the security officer, less with the Hong Kong Police, more with the military police in there. Right. My last month or so in Hong Kong, I was doing security for the Prince of Wales visit to Hong Kong and also preparing soldiers for the Remembrance Sunday parade. So I was doing security overnight and then a parade rehearsal in the morning.
Wow.
So I was doing sort of both things at the same time.
Wearing multiple hats.
And I then went to Northern Ireland, back to doing intelligence, liaising with the Royal Ulster Constabulary. So I was working with the Royal Ulster Constabulary. So back to intelligence and liaison. Did that for 2.5 years.
What year was
that? My first tour in Northern Ireland was 77 to 79. My second tour was 1990 to mid to late 92. So it was just over two years.
And you've seen it at two very different,
dramatically different, but also very much the same, but also different insofar as there was much more. By 92, there was still lots of terrorist activity, but it was different types and so on. And also, you're seeing it from a different angle because I was doing a different job.
Yeah.
I then left Northern Ireland and I went to a security section in Nottingham where I ran the section, and we looked after the whole of Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire and Leicestershire and so on, where we were doing security for all the military units, reserve units, cadet units and so on. The big change there from when I was in Aldershot was by then we were looking much more with the reserves as a potential threat from republicanism in Northern Ireland, whereas in 76, or when I was in Aldershot, it was just the regular units. By 90s, it was more the reserve units as well, because they could be perceived as a potential threat. So we did more work there. I then got promoted and I went to Germany, where I was doing counterintelligence with a deployable NATO headquarters. And from there, I managed to get deployed to Bosnia for 6 months with NATO. So the UN had finished by then. NATO had arrived to enforce the peace, and we arrived to enforce the peace, and we did 6 months there.
So you take a HQ, a NATO HQ, with you.
Yeah, the whole of the NATO headquarters moves.
By this point, what rank are you then?
I was then a Warrant Officer Class 1.
Right, wow.
So when I joined the Army, did I have any career ambition? My career ambition probably was to make sergeant.
Yeah.
Get 3 tapes on my arm, happy days.
Yeah.
So I joined, I got to sergeant, I was at Ashford teaching recruits, and I thought, right, what do I want to do next? And I wanted to go to Hong Kong, so I went to Hong Kong. Yeah. The jobs fell right, and I picked up my W02. And when I picked up my W02, I thought, right, if I can make W01, Warrant Officer Class 1, that will do me. At the time in the Intelligence Corps, there were only 14 W01s in the Corps. Wow. There's now a lot more. Yeah. But there were 14. So when I picked it up, when I was in Nottingham, and I picked it up so like 2 weeks before I was due to go to Germany, I was one of the 14, and I thought, yeah, this is it now. I've got this. Now, a lot of the Intelligence Corps are commissioned from the ranks.
Right.
And that was a potential for me. But I spoke to a few people at the time who had taken a commission and weren't happy because they'd gone from being at the top to being now just part of the mainstream again. So I thought, no, don't do that. Stick as a Warrant Officer Class 1 and then leave while still having enjoyed yourself. Because I saw people coming towards the end of the time who were leaving unhappy.
Right.
And of course, if you leave unhappy, any interview you go to in civil life, you're going to look unhappy or going to sound unhappy. So I thought, if I leave and I'm still enjoying it, hopefully that will carry through to my civilian life. So I did 4 years as a Warrant Officer Class 1, left the army in 1998.
I found it really interesting. The idea that you can be promoted through the ranks, and even though, for listeners who don't know, the idea of going from a non-commissioned officer to a commissioned officer is like any other promotion. It's an uptick in responsibility, in number of people that you have command over, in pay, presumably in respect generally, but actually from inside the organisation, you see yourself as then landing in a new pool at the bottom end of the spectrum. Do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going from being the top of a pool to being back to the bottom to work your way up. In the same way as you start at primary school, you get to 11, you're the top of the primary school. Then you go to secondary school and start at the bottom, and go right to the top, and then you go to university and start at the bottom, and then go to the third year and start. So it's very much like that.
I see.
It's not a bad thing. I mean, a very good friend of mine has just finished his army career. He did 37 years in the army.
Wow.
He was one of my recruits in my last intake at Ashford. Went all the way through, served with me in Bosnia as a staff sergeant, served with me when he was in Nottingham and I was in York for my last 2 years, got his commission, and he's just retired last month as a lieutenant colonel.
Wow.
Had a great time. Loved it.
Yeah.
So it was just from my point of view, I looked at it and thought, no.
Yeah, and you'd already exceeded what your goals were anyway. Yeah.
Others, it's the right move and so on, and for Andy, it certainly was. For me, I thought, no, I'll leave, still enjoy myself. And certainly my last 2 years in York, I had a great time, absolutely great time, and thought, right, it's time. I knew it was time to leave when I was interviewing a young Lance Corporal who was just arrived from training, and he'd joined the army. He'd been born, gone through school, joined the army, done his initial recruit training, done his trade training of 4 to 6 months, come to my first posting, and he'd done all of that whilst I'd still been in the army. And I just thought, no, it is definitely time for me to leave. If I've got a soldier arriving who was born after I joined and has gone through all of it's now time for me to go. Let the youngsters have a bash, and so leave.
Okay, so you've been... it sounds like you've been to Hong Kong as a child. You went to Hong Kong as an adult.
Yes.
You've been in Northern Ireland through some of the most, through the troubles, through some of the
fun
most
times.
You've been to Cyprus. You've been to Bosnia. What can you tell us, sort of, without going into too much detail? What it was like? What have you seen? How difficult was that for someone to sort of experience all of that violence and combat? And
we're in a weird situation in the intelligence corps. You do see it, and you don't see it, and so on. My first tour in Northern Ireland, I was based in the main army headquarters camp in Lisbon. So you could go down into the local town, which was a largely Protestant town, so it was safe and all the rest of it. Well, safe in inverted commas, as long as you kept your wits about you. And I worked in that barracks, lived and worked in the barracks.
I see.
And the only time I went out was going downtown into Lisbon, a few beers, maybe into Belfast for a bit of shopping. And that was it. My second tour, I lived in that same barracks, but I worked at the main police headquarters in Knock.
Right.
So I used to drive across Belfast each day to work. So I was commuting to work and back. That was probably one of my best tours because I worked with some of the most professional people in the world.
Right.
The Royal Ulster Constabulary were absolutely superb. The detectives that I worked with were unbelievably good. Did you see much? No, you saw the odd bit on the periphery more than anything else. I mean, you could go for a drive round Northern Ireland. The problem is that people in the United Kingdom, the mainland, would watch television and they would see a bomb going off in Northern Ireland. What they didn't see was the fact that bomb had gone off in Belfast or Portadown or wherever, but the rest of Northern Ireland was fine. I could go for a drive in Northern Ireland, and often did, for 4 or 5 hours, stop for lunch and come back.
You felt safe.
You would not see anything at all. So the problem is that because one incident happens, that's when people see the television.
Yeah.
What they don't see is all the normal day-to-day life carrying on around it.
Of course not. But I would imagine, I suppose in my head, I imagine that being out there in uniform or even not in uniform, but working for the army, that you would be at a higher risk than the average person. And
you potentially you could be.
Yeah.
We tended to be able to have a weapon with us at all times, even when we were in civilian clothes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you didn't carry it because of where you were going to. You just thought it's just too much hassle. It's just getting in. Other places you would carry it a lot more, depending on where you were going to.
Yeah.
So it was very much, if you knew where you were going, you could make an assessment of did you need to take something to protect yourself with. If you did, then you did. If you didn't, you didn't. Most of my time on that second tour and on the first one was in civilian clothes. About the only time I wore uniform was when I was doing military training. So we were going down to an army barracks to do ranges, to do some preparation training and so on.
Before we move on from your career, you mentioned a few other bits that you'd done while there, which sounded fascinating. Nuclear and biological warfare tactics, or something like that, was it?
When I initially started training, and when I was an instructor, it was called NBC, Nuclear, Biological and Chemical Defence, because we don't, in the British military, we don't have an offensive capability, but we need to do defensive training. So this was teaching soldiers how to wear the suit, the respirator, and so on, how to live in it, how to operate it in it, what drills to do to make sure that you're safe, and decontamination, all of that sort of stuff.
And everybody needs to know this.
Everybody in the military has to know it,
right?
And it's tested annually.
Right.
By the time I finished my time, it had changed from nuclear, biological and chemical to CBRN. So it's chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear, because they added that in. The training was the same. The equipment had changed slightly. We changed the respirator during my time in the regular army, an improved version. We changed the suits, slightly improved version. And then when I went into the reserves, they changed the respirator again for another improved version. And my role was to teach people how to use it and how to operate it in it, and how to test to make sure the equipment worked.
So that they could still be functional even in the middle of an attack of some kind.
So you'd use a testing facility. So you'd put some CS gas in there. They'd go in with the kit on. Do you feel any CS gas? No. Well, there is some in here, so you know the kit's working.
Right.
And then certainly as a recruit, you then had to be exposed to CS. The idea was that they would let you have some CS so that you knew, when you were wearing your kit, you couldn't smell the CS, so you know the kit's working. 2, you know what CS is if you ever do feel it. And 3, you know that it doesn't last for very long. And so I was one of the instructors for those.
Right. So it sounds like you accumulated a lot of knowledge, and you spent a lot of time protecting people.
A lot of weird
throughout your
stuff.
career. Did you ever feel unsafe? Did you ever feel at risk? Were you ever in any situations where you feared for your own safety, or did you feel that it was quite a secure sort of environment?
No, the only time. Not unsafe. The only time I thought, oh, hello, we were in Bosnia. It was New Year's Eve, and we'd had a few beers to celebrate New Year's Eve. This was December 95, 1st of January 96, and we were watching celebratory fire, because over there they like firing into the air and lots of fire, rounds going off and everything else. And we were watching these, and they were going from both sides past us and so on. And it was lovely. And then some of them hit the wall beside us and thought, now they're direct firing. So we went back indoors and carried on drinking. We woke up New Year's Day. Most of us had some serious hangovers, because the local beer was not that brilliant.
Be a good day to attack that, wouldn't it?
Perfect. So we had to go out and do a job. So we went out to do the job, did the job, and we were on the way home, and I had an American soldier working with me, had a multinational team, had an American, a Canadian, French-Canadian, an American, a Greek interpreter, a couple of Brits, and so on. We were driving back in 2 Land Rovers, and what was a 12.7 heavy machine gun, a Russian machine gun called a Dushka, opened up on us. Well, he didn't open up on us. He fired across from the distance. We think it was a drunk who was just firing
to scare you a bit.
Anything.
Oh,
No, he was just firing stuff that was moving. And these rounds, we heard them and saw them strike something. The American was driving because the American had always wanted to drive a Jeep.
Yeah.
And he'd never driven an Army Land Rover, so he got the chance to drive an Army Land Rover. And he said, was that for us? And I went, yes, put your foot down. So we put the foot down. We were right near the camp anyway, and drove into the camp. The one good thing about that was it cleared everybody's hangover straight away. Was he going to hit us? The only way he would have hit us was by accident, because he was drunk. But that was the only time we just thought, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But no, other than that, I think your training works really well to prepare you. So if something happens, you instantaneously know what you've got to do.
Yeah.
So do you feel concerned? Yeah, there's always, you're thinking, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But it's fine because we know what we've got to do if something happens.
The importance of,
so training.
training.
Kicks in and it works automatically.
And so, thank you. And so your final couple of years is in York at Strensel, did you say?
Yep. No, my final 2 years was in York in Infantry Barracks.
Oh, okay.
With the regular army. While I was there, it was obviously, what are you going to do when you leave the army? Most of the people in my cap badge in the intelligence corps go into security.
Right.
Working for security companies, working in security, etc., etc. I thought, no, I want to do something completely different. I'll keep that on the back burner because I can always go back to that.
Yeah.
I want to be a personal fitness trainer.
Right.
Because I'd started to get into my fitness whilst I was at Ashford in Kent. Before then, I'd done the annual fitness requirements for the military and nothing else.
So what, they have like a bleep test sort of thing?
No, certainly when I got to Ashford, the military tests were, it was a 1.5 miles in 15 minutes in boots.
Yeah.
And then a mile as a squad, and then 1.5 miles in boots, best effort as an individual.
I see.
And the 1.5 miles when you were under 30 was 10.5 minutes.
Right.
Once you were 30 and over, it was 11 minutes, and you got older, etc., etc.
I see.
So I could do that.
Yeah.
And there was also a 10-miler. And I could do that, and that was fine. But I was all right. I was comfortably doing that, but nothing further. I got to Ashford, and the instructors there, when I was a recruit, the instructors would watch you as you went out running with the PTI. And the physical training instructor would take you out, and the instructors would sit back in the office, watch you go out running. I got there as an instructor, and quite rightly, they said, look, we get the top 2% of the British Army, of soldiers joining the British Army because of their intelligence level or academic levels and so on. We've got to be doing it with them.
Right.
You know, we can't be sat down in an office watch because there's no respect. So we then went out with them. So we had to do the same physical fitness with them. So I did a lot more running, a lot more weighted marches and so on with them.
And how old were you at this point?
I was under 30 because I was 30 when I got to Hong Kong. Right. So I would have been in 26, 27.
Okay. Yeah.
And I started getting into the fitness then.
Right.
And then from then onwards, carried on with that fitness. I did my first ever marathon while I was in Hong Kong. I did my first ever half marathon while I was in Hong Kong. I then, while I was in Northern Ireland, because I thought, well, I've got to have a reason for keeping fit in Northern Ireland. So I did another marathon while I was in there. And from then onwards, I was doing 1 or 2 marathons a year, doing stuff, keeping fit. So when it came to the end of my military career, I'd done a UK athletics coaching course with the Army.
Right.
And thought, what am I going to... I know, I'll go be a personal trainer. So I went and did a personal training qualification as part of my resettlement training with the Army. So the Army paid for the course.
Are they quite good like that as you come to the end of your career?
Depending on how long you've done in. If you've done 12 years or more, they will help you with briefings on how to write CVs, interviews, etc., because obviously in the military you don't have to write a CV, you get posted somewhere else. So they help you with all of that. They'll help you towards a course that you want to do that might help you with your career plans. So yes, they're very good from that side of it. Really the career transition people are really good, and since they've now got things like LinkedIn, it's got even better because there's now I mean, there's always been a massive ex-military community out in the world.
Right.
Well, now through LinkedIn, that ex-military community is really kicking in, helping people leave to get employment and so on.
There's like a community of people that you can,
Massive.
opportunities are easier to
massive.
come across.
I mean, it's the age-old story that, and as you've already said, the military isn't a job, it's a career, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, when you come out, the only people who know what that lifestyle and career was like were those who were in.
Yeah.
So they can help you settle back into civilian life, etc., etc. I mean, one of the things we wanted to try, they've been trying to change, is you leave the army and you resettle and then you join civilian. We're saying it should be more of a transition.
Right.
Because you're not changing,
Gradual.
you're still the same.
Right.
You should transition from military to civilian, because you're still the same person. You're just transitioning from one career to another.
Yeah.
And most people, if they do 22 years, come out when you're 40, so you need to do another job.
Yeah.
So I was going to go into personal fitness training, which is unusual, as I say, for my cat badge. So I did that course. At the same time, a university, Anglia Polytechnic University, as it was then, now John Ruskin, were advertising in a military Pathfinder magazine, which is for people leaving the army, saying anybody who's an ex-sergeant major, an ex-quartermaster and so on, would like to civilianise their management qualifications, come and see us. We will accept the fact that your military career is equivalent to an undergraduate degree. We'll put you on a postgraduate programme. So I was doing that with them. So I did a postgraduate certificate in management, 6 modules, a postgraduate diploma in management, 6 modules, and I then did a master's by research to get an MSc. So I was doing all of that whilst doing the PT stuff.
So is this because you wanted to keep your options open, or did you already have an idea of what you
No,
wanted to?
I wanted to keep my options open, and I thought, well, they're offering me this postgraduate stuff for free.
Yeah.
Well, that's a no-brainer. It's a free course. I'm going to do it.
But then you've got the fitness side. You've got the all of you passed as a trainer, and now you've got management experience.
Well,
and
the
training.
trainer side was one of the reasons why I thought personal trainer, because I know I can already train, so I can go and do that. And the PT side of it was actually quite easy.
Right.
Because being a personal trainer, if you want to get somebody fitter, all you have to do is make them run faster or lift more. But when I first got out of the military, I didn't do personal training. Because the problem with establishing yourself, you've got to establish yourself.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do. I was working in a gym, and they were paying me about £4,000 to £5,000 a year, and I'd stuck that for about a month and a half, and then thought, no, you can poke this where the sun don't shine.
What? And then you were expected to try and bring in all of...
No, I was cleaning gym equipment and so on.
I see.
But I left it because the management in there was appallingly bad,
see.
and they couldn't organise a party in a brewery, and it was abundantly clear of that.
Yeah.
So I left. So I did a year with a management training company here in York, which no longer exists, whilst I was doing my management course, and I was still doing a bit of gym instructor on the side.
Yeah.
I then did a short-term contract with Group Force Security, looking after, they were doing some TUPE work, so I was helping them out with that, with recruiting. And I then thought, no, hold on, I left the military to be a PT, so I better start doing it. Right. So I started doing personal training properly, got myself established. I was working in a gym in York, doing some PT work, doing a bit more of the sports therapy, because that was more fun, because that's more a case of, well, what's wrong? And why are we having the same injury? What's going on? What can we do to fix it? It was more interesting.
So it was sort of troubleshooting rather than just fitness. It was you've got
somebody
a bad
comes
knee.
in and says, I've got a bad knee. Well, when have you? I've had it 4 times before. Right. So 1, let's fix the problem, and then 2, let's look at why you keep having the same problem, because something's wrong somewhere.
So strengthening exercises. Stuff that's,
look at the gait analysis, etc. So
Brilliant.
while I was doing all of this, I was part of a running club in York. And a mate of mine from the running club was a lecturer at York St John University. And he grabbed me one day and he said, look, you work as a personal trainer? I said, yes, I do. He said, we've got a problem. We've got a member of staff missing. He's off long-term sick. Could you come in? He said, with your clients, you talk about smoking, drinking, exercise, leisure time, physical activity, all that. I said, yeah, I do all of that. I said, I've done some work. I was working in a council gym at the time, and we'd done some work with them on getting people into exercise who didn't normally do it. So how to get them into a gym when they didn't want to, or they were scared of gyms.
Yeah.
doing time management, goal setting, all of that sort of good stuff.
Yeah.
He said, so you do all of that? I said, yeah, I've done all that. He said, could you come in and teach a module for us? He said, the lectures notes are already written.
Okay.
And I said, yes, I can teach it. He said, you haven't seen them yet? I said, I'm ex-military.
Yeah.
And the one thing about the ex-military, is that they can just stand up and deliver stuff.
Yeah.
Because the ex-military are really confident about, well, yeah, give me a lesson, give me 5 minutes, and I'll teach that lesson.
As long as
Have
the
you ever taught it
information's
before?
right.
If you ever taught it before, no, but I can teach it. And if you're telling me the lecture notes are already there, I can deliver it.
Right.
So I delivered that module. At the end of that, they said, look, that's gone really well. Would you like a job here at York St John for 2.5 days a week? And I went, yeah, I'll take it, 2.5 days a week. Yeah.
Still do your PT
They said,
stuff.
you can still do your PT and the other stuff. They said, there is one problem. I said, what? They said, you don't have an undergraduate degree. I said, no, I don't. They said, but you're busy studying to complete a master's. Yes, I am. Right. We will accept, that university's accepted your army career as equivalent to an undergraduate degree. We will do the same. Because we have to, because you can't have two universities doing but you must complete your master's to be able to teach at York St John. I said, well, I'm going to complete it. So I've completed my master's, submitted
Was this in your spare time then? How are you? Oh, I see, right.
So I submitted my dissertation, got my master's degree, started working at York St John for 2.5 days a week whilst doing the PT 2.5 days a week. And I'd done that, and I was teaching on the BA program.
Yeah.
So I was teaching on coaching.
Yeah.
So I was coaching running, coaching athletics, doing all the soft skills, coaching styles, etc., etc. And then they were reorganising the degree programs at York St John, and they were going to produce, instead of just a sports science degree, they wanted to produce an injury rehab degree.
Right.
And they said, right, we need 3 modules. They said we need an anatomy module, because bizarrely they taught sports science at York St John, but they never taught anatomy, which I never understood how they could manage to do it, but they did. Right. So they said we need an anatomy module at level 1, a massage module at level 2, and an exercise module at level 3. Who we got who does massage? Mark, you do massage, don't you? Yes. Write these 3 modules. You're now teaching on the sports science degree. Okay.
so massage was part of your PT and sports therapy training,
sports therapy includes massage. So I said, right, okay, I'm now teaching that then. So I changed from teaching BA to teaching BSc, and ended up teaching anatomy in the first year, sports massage the second year, and then exercise into the third year, and did that for the remainder of my time at York St John.
Which was how long?
I started there in 2004, and I finished in 2016, 2017.
Wow. And all from a chance
conversation
with someone.
There's a bloke who's off sick, can you come in and teach?
How incredible. What a remarkable career.
But also weird, because if I hadn't done the master's degree, I wouldn't have been able to get the job anyway.
Yes.
Because I don't have an undergraduate degree.
So you couldn't lecture without that qualification.
When I joined...
You've got to be at least as clued up as the people you're teaching.
When I joined, every academic had to have a master's degree to lecture on undergraduate.
I see, yeah.
Now, you've got to have a PhD to lecture on the undergraduate.
Right.
So there's been this massive trade inflation as regards qualifications in HE, which I think in some areas is a mistake, because it means that you're not getting people necessarily who are current in practice, because they've spent so long in academia to get a PhD, they've missed out on it. I was lucky. I came in when they were still, you need to have one level up from what you're teaching.
Yeah.
So if you're teaching on a master's degree, yes, you do need a PhD. But I was teaching on undergraduate, so you must have a master's. So I did it that way. So I did that. So I was there, 16 years. And as it happened, the first year I was teaching there, 2004, that's when I went away and did the TV series. Did that.
Tell me a bit. Well, we'll come back to the TV series.
Yeah, come back to that. Okay. So I did the time at university, finished it 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
I was planning to finish anyway. Yeah. I thought I got I had a cohort, like a brilliant recruit intake.
Yeah.
Some cohorts really worked together. Others didn't. Right. We used to have good intakes at my training depot and bad intakes. Yeah. Great individuals, but as a group, good or bad.
I see.
Well, we had this cohort at York St John who were really good. Yeah. They worked together well. There were some individuals in there where you thought probably not there, but the cohort as a whole were really good.
And how many people are we talking?
On the sports injury program, there was probably about 50,
Right.
maybe 60, and they were a really good intake. So I thought, if I see them through their third year, then I can leave.
Right.
And as it happened, there was a severance system happening. I found out about it. I took that, so I left a year early. So I left them as they were starting into their third year, rather than finishing.
Yeah.
But it was the right time for me to go.
Of course.
Luckily, they said, "Can Sullivan come back for our graduation?" I got invited back, so I came back for their graduation the following November anyway. So I did manage to see them graduate.
Right.
Well, that was a nice sort of tick in the box for me. So yeah, really good intake.
And you'd taken a job in the army, like you said, the job in the army happened to you.
Yeah.
Whereas this sounds like it was sort of thrust upon you by absolute chance, and you grabbed it with both hands.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I mean, to some extent, it was a case of, whilst you're a PT is great fun, as I say. PT is not hard.
Right.
Sports therapy is fun.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is you're self-employed.
Yeah.
So when you're not working, you're not earning.
Yes. There's pressure
Well,
there.
I had a mortgage.
Yeah.
So when they offered me 2.5 days a week, I thought, 2.5 days a week? That's a mortgage.
Knowing that I can do it because I've done it
That
for
money's
years.
coming in,
Yeah.
so that's guaranteed money. I could top it up. So that was going to pay the mortgage. So I thought, right, I need to do that because that's covering mortgage.
Yeah.
So if I suddenly go sick, I've still got mortgage to pay. So I did that, and then do the PT. Whilst I'd done that for a few years, then I took over as head of program because the head of program left, and nobody wanted to apply for it. So I said, well, I'll apply for it. And they said, well, you do realise if you apply for it, you have to go full time. I said, yeah, no, I do realise that. So I can't do 2.5 days a week as a full. So I took over as head of program.
Right.
And I'd done that for about, and when I took over, the lass I took over from, this was still when it was the BA program. I took over from it, and she'd said to me, she said, look, this is a real hard job, but, I'm sure you'll be fine. About a month into it, I grabbed my mate, who was by then the head of the school, and I sat him down. I said, look, I've got a problem. We need to go for a coffee. So we sat down over a coffee. I said, right. And you mentioned about imposters. I said, I think I'm doing something wrong. He said, what do you mean? I said, I said, look, I took over from this lass, and when she left, she said, it's a really difficult job. I said, and I've been doing it now for about a month, 6 weeks. I said, I'm not finding it that difficult. What am I doing wrong? And he went, you're not doing anything wrong. He said, the difference is you're bringing the military head to it, so it's easy for you.
Yes.
He said, it was harder for her because she isn't used to organising. He said, you've just gone tick, 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 done.
So it was an organisational. Were you still teaching? Were you still?
Oh yeah,
training?
you're still teaching. You're
but
still
you were
doing
also
more.
Coordinating other teachers.
Head of program is weird because you don't have any line management responsibility, so you don't manage the staff, but you have to try and program the staff for the various modules.
Right.
But you don't line manage them.
Okay.
So it's a real weird situation where you're saying to them,
the seniority.
we need you to be teaching on this module. Yeah, and that's not a problem because I taught on it last year. The module will be in these hours. Well, if they don't like that, I can't do anything because the line manager.
See.
If I hear a problem about it, if the students come to me and say, so-and-so isn't teaching what we're supposed to be teaching, or they're not turning up and so on, I can't go and grip them because then I'm not their line manager. I have to go to the boss and go, you need to like me. So it was a real weird setup.
Especially after you're used to the hierarchical system of...
Yeah, it was much flatter, but it meant that I had to use some of the skills from liaison, which I'd had when I was in Northern Ireland, where you go to people and say, look, come on, be my best mate ever and do this and do that. And get them to find out what made them tick.
Yeah.
To get them to be able to do the stuff that actually you want them to do.
Yeah.
But I wasn't finding it difficult, and I did feel a bit of a, not imposter syndrome, but something like that, because I'd come into academia from the military.
Yeah.
And I did have some academics who would look at me and go, well, you're ex-military. What do you know?
Yeah.
You used to shout at people. You know nothing. What? And occasionally you'd think maybe they're right.
Yeah.
Because I would always treat the first years like I used to treat recruits, i.e., that's the line. You cross that line and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
No black and white. In my lecture starts at 9 o'clock. If you're not there by 5 to 9, the door will be locked because the lecture's going to start on time.
Yeah.
You're not coming in when you're late unless you've got a good excuse. Because if you come in late, it's rude, it's ignorant, and it's upsetting me and it's upsetting everybody else.
Yeah.
And I'd have these rules set out from day one.
Right.
And then I would ease them off.
I see.
Because then I could be easier with them because they'd still remember we still have to do those rules. Because remember, we don't want to upset Mark. We've now got him being nice to us.
Did they all know your background?
Oh, yeah. Whereas other academics would come to me and go, you need to be nice to them when they first arrived. And I go, no. Because if you're nice to them, when you then have to shout at them or tell them they're wrong, they're just going to look at you and go, yeah, but you were nice last week. So do it the other way around. And so I did have this, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I am faking it. But then when you get to the third year, the number of them that would come to you and say, we want you to look after us for our dissertation, or we want you to do the work because we like you and we trust you. And I thought, well, there's the final arbiter. They think I was right.
Yeah.
I was nasty to them in the first year, but they're now talking to me, so I'm obviously doing something right.
And I think sometimes rules, I mean, they talk about it with little kids. I've got a 2-year-old, that actually it's less safe and secure when you don't know what the rules are.
Yeah.
Having some boundaries and knowing where the lines are
I
keeps
agree.
you in kind of a secure environment where you know what the lay of the land is, don't you?
I mean, one of the mature students actually said to me, she was working in the Students' Union, and she had some of the mature students complaining about, talking about me, and they're going, Mark, he's scary, isn't he? He's really scary. And she went, I worked with him. I was one of his students for 3 years. She said, what's scary about him? They said, well, she said, how much is he asking you to do for next week's work? They went, oh, not much. And she went, no, he won't ask you to do a lot. He'll ask you to do a couple of things, but he will expect you to have done it, because if you don't do it, you're leaving.
Yeah.
She said, but he won't ask you to do a lot.
Yeah.
All you got to do is do those 2 things, then rock up, and guess what? It's an easy time.
So you weren't barking orders at them. You weren't drill sergeant. You were. It was simply that you had fixed boundaries.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
You will learn this. I want you to come in next week having revised this.
Yeah.
If you don't revise it, don't bother coming in, because why should you benefit from the others who have revised it?
Yeah.
Bring a pencil and paper with you, because you're going to need to make notes. Why haven't you got a pencil and paper with you? Well, have you got a photographic memory? No. Well, go on then. Go away.
Yeah.
Because you're wasting my time and everyone else. And some of the other tutors started to do the similar system. A very good friend of mine actually threw half his cohort out from a lecture because it was the first lecture and half of them hadn't turned up with pen and paper. Yeah. And he went, this is an hour-long lecture and you haven't got pen and paper with you.
Did you notice through your career that getting worse or better, or how, because presumably that is when people first start at university, it's a big change for them. There isn't anything like that. So presumably you're not just teaching them information, you're warming them up to that lifestyle as well.
That was the other problem we had, was some academics thought they were there to teach that degree. Yeah. Which you are. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. And you're there to teach that module. But I always thought we were there to do more than that. These young people, when I started on the BA program, most of the students there wanted to become PE teachers. Right. So I thought, well, some of the things we need to be teaching them is the standards they would want to expect of a PE teacher. So I would always turn up dressed properly, on time, in the correct kit, tidy, neat, etc., to say to them, this is what you would expect, and you will expect this when you're teaching, so here's what the standard... And this is what the standard I'm going to set, and I expect you to do it. If I ever turn up not in this, then that's your excuse not to. Yeah. But at the moment, if I do, you will. Yeah. So they did. And I think my argument was always, we're trying to teach them more than... Yes, we'll teach them a degree, but to some extent, they'll learn the degree because they'll go and revise it. Yeah. We're trying to teach them all the soft skills, like how to work together, how to do interviews. And all. So I used to teach a module which included things like interview skills, writing CVs and so on. Right. Because if they went out without all of that, the first job they applied for and somebody went, oh, York St John's student, they're not very good. Yeah. I wanted those people who they went to for their first interview to go, good students, this lot are preparing them well.
They're on time, they look the part, they know the
That's
stuff
it.
that they...
Because then, if they get used to that, it's a lifestyle thing for them. And touch wood, I think it worked.
That's interesting as well, because, it sounds... if you don't mind me saying, quite old school. That idea of that way of...
And I'll quite happily admit, I'm ex-military, so I am old school. Yeah. And we did have some academics who went, what are we teaching? Why are we doing interviews with them for jobs?
Did you have some control over what went into that at this point? Then? Were you helping?
In the work-based module, yes. So I introduced the fact that they had to do a mock job interview.
Right.
They had to apply for a job and have a mock job interview because I thought that would be beneficial to them. Stupid things like, I had one lad come in for an interview. He'd applied for a job as a gym instructor. And I said, right, what experience have you had of working in gym? And he went, none at all. Well, in a reality, if you'd done that in reality on a gym interview, you'd be walking out the door without the job.
Yeah.
So we carried on with the interview, and then at the end, I said, right, feedback. And as we're going through it, I said, right, what jobs have you done? So we started talking about jobs he'd done, where he'd worked with people, he'd worked with money, he'd helped with organising, with planning and everything else. Yeah. And at the end of it, his feedback was, all of that stuff is relevant. When I said to you at the start, what experience have you of working with gyms, you should have said, none in a gym. However, I've worked with people where I've organised times, done this, I've organised, made sure that. I said, you've got all the skills to fit the job.
Yeah.
You just don't link them. Stop linking them to a gym. Just think about what you've got. And
it could be hard, I suppose.
Afterwards, he came back to me and he said, that was really useful. He said, because I've just applied for a job. And I hadn't got, but I got it because I've used the things of, oh no, but I can come at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't have had that if we hadn't done a mock job interview. So I used to argue with other academics that it was important for that reason.
Yeah.
Just that one person made it. That's the reason we're doing this. But their argument was, we're here to teach a degree. This has got nothing to do with the degree. They can learn this by going to the careers department in the university. Yeah, if they do. Yeah. But the careers department is looking after the whole of the university. That's 6,000 students. We've got 60. So let's deal with our 60 and help them.
And make sure that when we talk to them again in 5 years, 10 years, they've got jobs, even if they're not relevant to this particular profession.
They've used the soft skills they've got from it. So
it's a skill everybody needs.
I think so. And I've always thought so.
It's always struck me as a bit... Not everybody's an extrovert. Some people do struggle to link communication, link ideas, and they get nervous under pressure and all that. So actually, the way that people are selected for jobs kind of weighs in favour of people who are able to talk. And
well, on paper, based on the Myers-Briggs, I'm an introvert.
Right. Yeah.
Always have been.
Right.
But because of the stuff I've done in the military, and because of I'm applying for jobs and all the rest of it in the past, I know what I need to do to get round that.
I see.
And I'm sitting in a job interview. What have you got to do? You've got to research, you've got to prepare, you've got to do all of that, and you've just got to come in and sell it.
Yeah.
And every job application, once I got into the university, I got promoted, I got all the jobs I needed, because you could stand and go, come on in, talk to me.
Yeah.
Yep, let's give it.
It sounds like such a remarkable... not orthodox career path.
Vastly not orthodox. Yeah. I mean, I applied for the Institute of Learning and Teaching, which is now the Higher Education Academy, and it's a 3,000-word application, and I wrote it in an afternoon, submitted it, and the assessors in York St John went, this is the most weird, off-the-wall version, but we'll use it. I got membership, and they then used mine for the next year as an example of how to come at it from a non-traditional route. Yeah. Because they said, well, everybody comes into academia through university, doing undergraduate, master's, PhD, job. You haven't, but you've still got the same entry. So we're going to use yours as an example of, see, you don't actually have to come at it from the normal one. You can get it through this.
I bet it's quite nice for them to see something different for once.
Yeah, and I think that was why... Certainly from the students' point of view, a lot of the students went, well, we'll talk to you because you've got some life experience. Yeah. You haven't just been, academic. Yeah. And whilst you're in academia, you've done a part-time job just to earn some money. You've actually gone out and done some real world. Yeah. And you can talk to us about that real world and go, right, we're doing sports massage. Here's the score. This is what you're learning. But when you're out there doing it for real, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's respect.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I mean, I knew Jack because Jack had been a student and was then head of the Students' Union. And I think... Jack was one of the better presidents of the Student Union, and that's not because it's Jack, although it was because it was Jack. Yeah. It's because Jack, like a few others, he did 2 years as president of the Students' Union. Most students do a year as Student Union president. You can't do anything in a year because you're going to spend the first couple of months trying to work out what exactly you're doing. Yeah. You're then going to spend the next few months thinking, I can achieve the world. Yeah. And then the last couple of months thinking... grief, I'm leaving. What am I going to do when I leave?
Of course, yeah.
Whereas because you do 2 years, as Jack did, you do all that in the first year, But instead of leaving it, you suddenly think, right, I've got another year. Then reality kicks in, and you then start doing, right, what can I achieve?
Yeah.
Not my wonderful dreams, because the
Yeah.
dream ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
What can I physically achieve with the limited stuff I've got and make the best of it? Yeah. And I think the 2-year presidents were always the better ones. Because they've got more time. They got that first year almost to settle in and go, no, forget all the bluff about how we managed to get elected, not lies, but the really wild stories we said we were going to be able to achieve, which were never going to happen in reality.
They got us into power.
That's
how politics
We're going to
works.
stop the students doing this. We're going to stop it. No, you're not. Get real. And then they would get real and go, right, we've got another year now. Let's try and do something.
Yeah.
And they would get more done. And I thought Jack was really good from that point of view.
Yeah.
And then when he came back and he was working there with the North Yorkshire Police as well, so I got to see him a few more years because of that. So I think the big thing I found with the students was you were trying to help them do stuff. Yeah. And I think a lot of them started coming to me towards the end of their times going, look, I'm applying for this, I'm applying for that. How will I do this? What will I do? What can I do to get this? And so on. So I was doing more, not pastoral support, but a bit more mentoring to say, right, here's the score, let's go on here. I also got the students, a few students who would come and talk to me about problems that they were having.
Right.
Because they felt, well, if we're going to talk to somebody, let's talk to somebody who looks like they've got some life experience, because he might have the chance. Because I used to say to them in the first year, I said, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm ex-military. I did 22 years in the military. You cannot come to me with anything that I haven't heard of or seen or faced before in my life. There is nothing you will do come to me that will shock me. So if you want to come and talk, do so. It's not a problem.
You've immediately created quite a safe environment for them to say
to them, look, you can. It's not a problem. And we'll go and we'll sit down, we'll have a coffee, or we'll go and sit down somewhere quiet, and you can talk to me stuff, and I will not be shocked. It doesn't matter what you think it is not going to be bad. Yeah. You might think it's bad, but once you've talked to me about it, we will get this squared away. Yeah. I said, I will also tell you, I may not be able to answer it. Yeah. But because I'm a lecturer here, I'll know where we can go to get the answer. Yeah. So I'll know where we can go to get help. So come and talk. So I would get students coming in with personal issues over finances, over relationships, etc., where you could not point them in the right direction, because some of the other academics were good. We had a couple there who would point them and go, oh, go and see this, go and see that. My argument was always, if the students come and talk to me, no, I'm not going to point them there. I'm going to take them across there. Yeah. So I would take them to the Students' Union and say, right, we need to speak to the welfare people. Why? I need to speak to the welfare. What about? I need to speak to the welfare people. When I sit down in front of them, then I'll talk to them. Yeah. Oh, okay, so we'll get them in. So you would get them to the point where they're physically in touch with you. Do you want me to stay or do you want me to go? Some of them would take, do you mind staying? Not a problem. Yeah. Others would say, no, I'm fine now, Mark. Let's go. And they would crack on. Yeah. So you'd get them to a position where they would help them, because my whole argument was, you're coming here, you're bright enough to be here, well, let's try and keep you here. There was only one, I think, in all that time where I actually sat him down. He had some discipline problems and he wasn't turning up for lectures. So we called him in for a case consultation, and his mum came in with him, which is never a good sign. And he sat down with his mum and we said, right, you haven't been to... And his mum said, well, you told me you were here. Oh. And he was telling, he was telling us that he was off sick and so on. So we said, right, there's obviously a mismatch here. So so left, and they said, right, Mark, we're going to give him an interview. Then sort him through. He's one of your students. I said, yeah, not a problem. So I sat him. So he obviously wasn't for it. And his big thing was his brother and sister had both done degrees. His mum and dad had done a degree. He was doing a degree.
I see.
So chatted away, so finished all the interviews, signed everything off. Yep, you will do this, you will be in touch, and so on. And about 2 or 3 days later, I said, right, we need to have a chat. So sat down, brought over, bought him a coffee. I said, right, I'm not having this chat with you. Yeah. I said, and if you ever say I had it, I'm going to deny it. Yeah. I said, you don't want to be here, do you? He went, no. I said, this is not for you at this time, is it? He said, no. I said, right, now the university and I had that conversation last week because we want you to stay. I said, no, be honest, because it's a business and it's money and so on. I said, but this is not for you at this moment in time, is it? He said, no. He said, I don't want to do this. I said, is it because your mum and dad? He said, everybody in my family's got a degree. I said, I know. I said, you will probably get one. I said, but just not now.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And he went, I'm not sure. I said, well, what don't you want to do? He said, well, I don't want to be here. I said, okay, so we'll start with that.
Yeah.
So we worked through some of the things he might. I said, well, you quite like that. You quite like that. I said, what about going and do that now? He said, well, I said, just go. I said, if you left now, you're not going to pay any more. You're not going to pay any less. You might have a bit of money to give back from the student union, but you will be happier.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years' time from now, you might go, I'll come back to university. And he went, yeah. And he messaged me about a month after that, and he went, thanks. He said, I'm doing this. He said, it's not brilliant, but I'm earning a bit of cash, and I'm happy.
He's on the way.
Yeah. And if he ever goes back to university, but
And how much time would he waste if he kept on like
he would have had another 18 months where he wouldn't have turned in at university because he wouldn't have enjoyed it. He would have tried bluffing his mum off against bluffing us off, and nothing would have worked for him. And at the end of those 18 months, he would have been more in debt and probably wouldn't have got a degree anyway, or he'd have got a third-class honours, or even just a third-class degree, and he would have really struggled later on because he'd be going with this degree that wasn't relevant and wasn't showing what he was capable of.
Yeah.
I
wonder how many people do that because they feel that they're supposed to, and that's the way. Well, that's how society works.
Well,
the more degree qualified I am, the more.
I think there are a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And more as they go, you've got to do university. I think the T qualifications that they've now got, these tech things, that might help reduce some of that. But certainly while I was there, there was I would say there was always a percentage of students who were there because it was expected that they would go to university.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look back at it, and we've mentioned it earlier on, my academic career was certainly never going to end up in a degree.
Yeah.
Certainly never going to end up teaching at university because I'd failed 2 out of 3 A levels. I got an O level pass in 1.
Yeah.
So I was never going to get anywhere. I got into the army because I was educationally not very bright, but I could get past the test, so I got in. And then when I finished, I ended up with a master's degree and a lecture at university. And I'm like, how did that happen?
But what I love is that you were a lecturer first, and the qualifications. No, it's probably unfair to say the qualifications were because you wanted to become a lecturer. You were doing the masters anyway.
Yes.
But just you got the job because of your life skills, because of what you'd learned, because you could talk to people, because you could train out of a book, regardless of whether you'd seen the material before.
Yeah, I mean, the military's really good in preparing people to do stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with a lot of people when they come out of the military is they don't realise all of those skills. Yeah. I mean, a great example, I was part of the Institute of Leadership and Management. We were up in Catterick doing a presentation or listening to a presentation in Catterick, and we had this Sergeant Major, Warrant Officer Class 2, from the Infantry Training Centre, talking about training the trainer courses that he was writing. So he was writing these train the trainer courses and then delivering them.
Yeah.
And we were sat there having a coffee afterwards, and I said, look, I'm ex-Army, ex-W01, etc., meeting, so on. I said, we've got a master's degree. I said, I'm lecturing at York St John University. We've got a master's degree in managing leadership and change.
Yeah.
I said, you should sign up for that because you would walk the course.
Yeah.
I said, because you're doing it now.
Yeah.
You would love this. And he went, I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, because I'm a sergeant major in the infantry.
Yeah.
And that's all he saw. He said, I'm a sergeant major in the infantry. I said, no, you're writing, delivering courses, you're amending courses, you're quality evaluating courses, you're doing all of that. And he went, no, I'm just a sergeant major in the army.
Yeah.
And the problem for some people in the military is when they come out, that's what they see. I've been looking at why this might be. And one really good example I was given was maybe it's because everybody in the military can do that, so they don't see it as anything special.
Yeah.
It's only when you go outside when people go, well, I can't do that.
Well, you said yourself about, like, you don't often get taught enough about how to do an interview. And a lot of what an interview is translating your current skills into, like, relatable skills to the job. And if people have never done that, they see themselves as this instead of...
I'm a sergeant major.
Yeah. Did you feel any of that? Did you feel any sort of loss or grief or struggle going from the military sort of culture into Civvy Street?
Well, when I was leaving the military, they all said to me, join the reserves because you'll miss the military. And I thought, no, I've got to make sure I do a break. Yeah. I can't join the reserves. It was an obvious thing to do, join the reserves, because then you're still keeping a link. And I thought, no, I can't. And I left the military on the 8th of August, 1998. And about 4 or 5 months in, or after, I sat down and thought, have I missed the military? Well, I've missed the crack.
Yeah.
But I haven't missed it. Now, part of that was because I was running around like a blue-ass fly, trying to find a job, trying to find somewhere to live, finishing my courses, finishing the master's degree, finishing the personal training course. So I was doing so much that I almost didn't have time to think about leaving the military. And the other thing, I think, whether this actually helped or not, I don't know. Because I'd spent so much time not in uniform, although my last 4 years I was all in uniform, but because I'd spent quite a lot of my army career not in uniform, whether that helped me settle in, I don't know. I don't think it did, but it was one of those weird options. But I think because I was so busy for 6 months, I didn't miss the military. So it didn't matter. And then within a year, 18 months after that, the reserves came to me and said, look, we've got a job or a couple of jobs here that you could do if you came along. Surprisingly enough, involving training, teaching, and so on. So, no problem. Would you like it? And at that point, I sat down and thought, right, will I be joining the reserves because I missed the military? Or will I join the reserves because I think I've still got something to offer? The latter. Right, I'll join then.
I see.
Because if I joined it, if it was because I was missing it, I probably wouldn't have done it.
And it wouldn't be presumably it would never be the same.
I mean, it was never going to be the same anyway, because it's only at weekends and so on. But I thought, I've still got something I can offer these youngsters. That's what I'm going to do. So that's why I went into the reserves. But no, I was, touch wood, I was quite lucky. I don't think I missed the military. I missed the crack, the banter, the black gallows humour. The one where you find your soldier lying wounded in the battlefield, and he goes, I can't feel my legs, and don't worry, son, they're over there. That sort of. You see the same sort of humour with the fire service, the police, and so on.
Yes, a bit warped.
Very warped. Very warped.
Got to laugh, otherwise.
I do a 100-kilometre charity event every year, and the first year I did it with York St John University was in 2004. And we were coming into a checkpoint, and I saw a military policeman who I'd known when I was in York for my last 2 years. So we hadn't seen each other since 1998, and this was 2004, so it was a long time. And I was walking down this hill with a couple of academics and a couple of students, and we're walking down, and this bloke saw me, and he went, "You in this, you," and I went, "You," and we were ripping into each other. You useless, idle piece. No wonder you're not walking. You're not capable of even standing up on your own feet. Really ripping into each other. And it was like, and then we walked past, and one of the academics, who was a very Christian gentleman, said, "I thought you were going to punch each other." I said, "No, we're good mates." And he went, "That's how you greet your mates?" I said, "Yeah, of course you do." And that's how you do. That's how the military. You could not have seen somebody for 15, 20 years. You join. One, you start the conversation the same as it was when you finished. Yeah. But two, you will abuse each other because that's what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, my boss, when I was in York for my last 2 years, his leaving speech when I was leaving, he said, he stood up in front of all these policemen and he said, when I got here, I'd known Mr. Sullivan when I was at Ashford as a young officer. He said, but I was a bit worried the first time I heard him answer the phone to Staff Sergeant Tyler, the lad who then became a lieutenant colonel. He said, because the first few minutes was all him telling him he was a useless long streak of whatever, and he was. He said, but then I realised that by the time the 5 minutes were over, he'd worked out what the problem was, and solved it, and given young Tyler the solution, whilst being ritually abused at the same time. He said, and I thought, no, it's fine. It's just the way he is. and it works. Yeah. But yeah, this lad, this poor old academic, thought there was going to be a fight on their hands and he was going to have to pull us apart.
But I think again, that's another reason why perhaps it's hard for people to slip back into these other roles when they've just got this completely different way of communicating with each other.
You do have to not think, but you do have to think, no, I need to tone this down. No, don't, because the people around you in the office don't understand this, so don't get your... I worked with a ex-professional footballer who's a lecturer at York St John, and he had a bit of that because of ex-professional football, where they do. And I worked with a lad who was ex-RAF regiment, again at York St John, and that we could get because we knew each other from... Not from that sort of background, but we were coming from similar areas.
Yes.
So, but there were some others where it was like, ooh.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We talk about it a bit in Menfulness, the idea of where the boundary for banter crosses into sort of toxic, whatever you want to call it, masculinity. And everyone's threshold for that might be different, and also people's previous experiences of things like bullying, etc., might factor
massively
into that. And I wonder what your experience of that has been from inside the army. Like, did you see any of that? Did you? Because a lot of people who leave the army, I understand, do experience.
When they leave early, they're leaving it because they're being bullied. I was in Aldershot. I was a sergeant due to be going to Ashford as an instructor, and one of my corporals came to me and said, whilst he was a recruit there, one of the corporals used to bring their mail round in the evening and read it to them in front of them all. The whole squad, and he'd be reading their mail and things like this. And I thought, right, okay, so that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
So got to Ashford. The corporal was just on his process of leaving. He was posting. And I grabbed him to one side and I said, I'm glad you're going. And I proceeded to tell him why I was glad he was going, because I knew this had happened.
Yeah.
And he was like, I said, no, don't even think about lying to me. Yeah. I know you did it because I've had it from people who had it done to them. Yeah. You ever try and come back here as an instructor while I'm here, and I will bag you. So he left. I spoke to the sergeants and told them, and they said, we didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, of course, unless somebody tells you, you don't know. They might not be happy, but unless they tell you, you won't know. And the reason they weren't telling them, and I spoke to them, they thought, well, if the corporal's doing it, he must have got permission from the sergeant to be able to do it, because the sergeant's in charge of the corporal. Yeah. So if the corporal's doing it, the sergeant must know. Yeah. Well, the sergeant didn't know, because the sergeant lived in that building, the corporal lived in the block with them. So there was this dividing line. They didn't know. Yeah. If they'd known, they could have stopped it. Yeah. They didn't know. So I made it a big thing while I was at Ashford to try and not be in the block, because you need to leave the blokes to their own time, but to get to that point where if there was a problem, they would come and tell you. Yeah. So
it's got to be hard, though.
It is difficult because they see that hierarchical structure and think, that bloke's in charge. That bloke's in charge of him. Yeah. If he's doing something, the people above him must know.
Yeah, but also, do you not think there's part of it that's like, well, nobody else at my level's complaining about it. Maybe this is what we're expected to put up with.
Maybe this is the norm.
I don't want to be seen to rock the boat. What if people think that I just can't handle it?
I mean, I think there is a much better system now for reporting problems than there used to be. Yeah. They are much more open about going, look, if there's a problem, come and tell us, come and talk to us, and so on. I mean, there was a famous old joke in the British military: got a problem, go see the Padre. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? That's essentially now, man up, almost, isn't it?
But
in
now
a different way.
they actually do mean, no, go and talk to somebody. Yeah. Because there are people there available. There's now welfare people, both military and civilian, around training bases. It tends to happen more in training bases than in units. Yeah. But it still happens in some units, potentially. Yeah. But there is much more support for those training people. To be able to get to that point of being able to talk to somebody. So I think it is much better now than it used to be.
Because I'm imagining that people... It needs to be,
because you've invested all that to get them in. Yeah. Well, why waste money getting rid of them? Let's keep what we've got, because we've spent a lot of money getting this person to this stage. Yeah. Let's keep them. Yeah.
I mean, you hear stories on places like building sites and in other sort of predominantly male environments where... people will let it get so bad, whatever it is. It might not be something that someone else has done to them. It might just be that they're struggling so much with what they've seen or what's happened to them that they keep it quiet for fear of looking weak. And I can imagine it must be tenfold when you're meant to be going out there. Other men might be relying on you for their lives. If you start saying, I don't feel well today, it might be your career or your promotional opportunities, presumably.
Well, I think there was always that fear in the military of saying, I can't own up to having a mental health problem because if I do, I'll get booed.
Yeah.
Well, actually now they're going, no, you won't. It's
won't.
not a problem.
That's
because we're better off treating that problem or getting you to the point where we've treated it. Just even if that treating means you having a chat to somebody and you go, I feel better now.
Yeah.
Good. Again, we've invested lots of money in you.
Yeah.
We don't want to waste that money.
Yeah.
You know, keep you in is a lot cheaper. You know, it's the old sort of like working in a gym. Doing sales is really expensive. Retention is cheap.
Yeah.
So retention in the military is a lot cheaper than recruitment.
Yes.
Because once they're in, you've invested all of that. Keep them in.
You see that, and so you can see it from business sense. It's the same at the university, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You can see it from business sense,
Same.
retain people.
Yeah.
But from a real term sense, you can't approach a person like that. You've got to approach them like you have, which is, what can I do? How can we help? Let's talk to you.
Yeah, come and talk to me, and then we can do something.
Yeah, that I don't think in all areas of life that's filtered through yet. That you might want to keep these people, but you've got to hear them out and listen to them and understand what they really need.
If you don't listen to certainly as a small manager, if you're managing a team, doesn't matter how big, if you're not finding out what makes that team tick, you're not helping that team to be effective. You're also not allowing that team to come and say to you, I have a problem. Because that one person in the team who has that problem, you fix that problem and suddenly you've got a better team because they're now happier. You should know your team well enough to be able to know, that person's not as switched on as they normally are. What's up?
Yeah.
What's the problem? Back to that 100k walk, you get really good. Now, my sister has always said that this is because I'm ex-military. I get really good at spotting when somebody needs a talk to or when they need to be just left alone.
Right.
And my sister said to me, it's just because you're ex-military, you just know. I think, maybe it is some of that, but you do know, you can see. You're walking along with a group of people, and I've taken teams of up to 20 on this before, and you're walking along, and you're looking at them, and you're looking around, and we did some research one year on mental toughness, where the lecturer doing it, mental toughness had always been looked at from elite perspective. And always elite perspective once they've finished an event. So if you've finished the event and you've won it, you're going to be mentally strong.
Yeah.
If you finished the event and you lost, you're going to be mentally weak.
Right.
So he thought, right, one, we're not going to do elite people. And two, we're going to do it during the event. And let's see how it is. So he talked to these students and myself early on in the walk. He'd walked one leg with us. And then he had a few legs off. And then he came and talked to us on one of the later legs. Asking similar sort of questions just to find out what the difference was. And the things he found was one was heavily into how much they've invested into it, so they want to keep going. But the interesting one, and he said this to me afterwards, he said, cracking one from me, he said, he came to me, and I don't remember him asking me, he said to me, are you all right? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. He said, no, are you really all right? You know, physically, man. He said, have you got any blisters? I said, I've got no idea. He said, what do you mean you've got no idea? I said, I've got no idea. I said, because when we get to the checkpoints, I haven't got time to look at my feet because I've got to look after all of them. I said, and if I've got blisters, I'm not... I said, so I don't care and I don't know whether I've got blisters because I'm busy looking after them. They're first. So to some extent, leading means you can forget about your problems because you've got to look at their problems first and fix them. So I'd be walking along and I'd be sat there and I'm thinking, right, that person, when we get in the checkpoint, that one needs a bit of a chat. This one, no, they're all right. We can leave them, that's right. This one, no, they need to be left alone because they're in a zone where if we talk to them now, they'll get to the next checkpoint and they'll sack it. Yeah. And we were doing it this year and we were coming along and we got into this checkpoint and we were doing so like 5 or 10 minutes at the checkpoints. And I came in, I grabbed the support crew and I said, the next checkpoint. He said, what? I said, you get some water, warm water and some salt and foot baths. And he went, yeah, okay. So we got in. We came to the next checkpoint. I said, right, usual. I said, right, we're working time. You got an extra 5 minutes, folks, if you want to soak your feet. And they all went, oh, yeah. And the lad said to me, he said, that wasn't planned, was it? I said, yeah, it was. But they don't think it was. They think they're being given extra time. And look at the difference it's made for them all. They're sparking.
Yeah. So you mean it was already scheduled?
Oh, yeah, I'd scheduled it. But for them, it's like extra time. Ooh, happy days.
Okay.
And this poor lecturer, he came along with us, and he said, right, I want to talk. I said, do me a favour, don't talk to that lass over there. He said, why not? I said, because she's in a zone at the moment, and if you talk to her, she won't finish. She's just got her head down and she's just doing it. Leave her. And he went, but it'd be really useful. I said, no, I agree. I said, you'd probably get better information out of her than all the rest combined. But by doing that, she won't finish. Yeah. So you have to leave her alone. Talk to the rest, but just leave her alone. Yeah. And he went, oh, that's such a shit. I said, I know. From a research point of view, I'm killing you, but I don't care. Yeah. You'll kill her if you talk to her. Yeah. So you do get to know really well. And I think certainly when I was a lecturer with the students, you got to know the students enough to where you could go in and be working with them and you'd think, ooh, something's not right. And you'd finish the session, you'd go, everyone all right? Said, just have a quick word. Yeah, okay. Look, what's going on? What do you mean, Mark? Something's not right. Come on, we'll go and have a chat. Yeah. And you could, not all the time, don't get me wrong, but you'd spot one and you'd think, you're not sparking as normal, or there's something not right. Yeah. Let's come and sit down and have a chat. And you'd 9 times out of 10, and they'd go, how did you know? I just knew. Yeah. There was something there which just said, we need to have a little chat.
That's absolutely fascinating. We talk a little bit in some of the suicide awareness training that I've done and things like that, that there is a part of our gut instinct, of our natural sort of sense that we'll sometimes miss if we're not listening to it. Yeah. But the idea that you can pick up on somebody just from them being in the same room as them, or how they're sort of holding themselves. I wonder if that's like years of being in rooms with lots of people and having to do these things quickly, like you say, at an early age, moving quickly and having to get to know people very fast. I
think some of it might be that. It's weird. It might also be just the army system of that's how we train and so we'll do it. Yeah. It's a mixture of a lot of things. Yeah. Certainly when we've touched on it a couple of times, when we were doing the TV series, we had people in there, young lads, doing this national service for 28 days. And you got good at spotting those who were going to be fine, or those who were thinking, right, that one needs a bit more work and so on, or this one's a complete waste, they're not going to do this, etc. etc.
So what will you tell me about the TV show then?
Yeah, we did. Basically, I answered an advert in Soldier magazine. And Soldier magazine used to come out monthly. I think it comes out every 2 weeks or monthly now. And the advert said who instructors wanted to recreate 1950s national service. So I phoned them up. It was a TV company, so I had a bit of a chat. And they said, right, will you come down and do a piece? Yeah, so I went down, had an interview, went through my CV again. They said, yeah, it's really good. Can you do a piece to camera? So, yeah. So they brought these 3 lads in. So I shouted and screamed at these 3 lads. And they thought it was really funny. I found out later the reason they thought it was really funny, because everybody they had in for that whole day shouted at one bloke in particular and picked on the same one bloke. And he was the son of the owner of the company. So this poor lad was getting hell for the whole day. So, but at the end of that, they said, right, you've got the job. Yeah. Any questions for us? I said, yeah. I said, when are we doing this video? Because I assumed what they were going to do was record a video and just put it out. They went, oh no, it's not a video. It's a reality TV show for 4 weeks. They said, we're going to film for 4 weeks and you're going to do recruit training. And I went, yeah, okay. They went, that's not a problem. I said, no, it's fine.
It's Buffett Army! Boy!
Sergeant Mark Sullivan introduces himself to the lads. He's not one to mince his words.
Good afternoon, Montgomery Platoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Shut up, Swanning, you! Get down now! You, blue shirt, get down! Give me 10, now! Don't look at him around behind him! Look straight ahead! When I address you, you will refer to me as Sergeant! Do you understand, Montgomery Platoon?
Yes, Sergeant!
Better! You stop moving! Down! Give me 10 now!
I was out of the army. I was academic at university.
Yeah, so you could
and
just
I went to the university and said, look, can I take the time off? And they went, yes, you can. One of the students, bizarrely, had applied for the job, but didn't get it because the TV company went, he's from the same university as Mark. We can't have that. That might be dodgy. It might be difficult. So he didn't get it. He came in, he saw the series, came in afterwards to university, and he said, I applied for that series, but I didn't get in, but they never told me why. And I'm thinking, I know why, but I'm not going to tell him because he'll be really upset.
Until he watched it and then realised that it was...
Yeah, it was me. But he still didn't know why he didn't get it. He didn't connect the fact that I was on it.
I see.
He just didn't get on. So, they turned up, and they did 28 days of national service, of recruit training in the national service, and we were the instructors.
Brilliant.
Bizarre.
How was
really
that?
weird. It was great fun. I mean, it was brilliant fun. Yes, it was going back to 1950s drill and 1950s uniform, but it was great fun.
Did you have to do some research onto that?
Yeah, they gave us Carry On Sergeant to watch as a film. The bloke who did all the kit was a military historian. Who gave us a lot of advice. We got lots of 1950s drill manuals, skill at arms manuals, and so on. So we had to learn the 1950s rifle, 1950s drill, which was a little bit different than current drill. I had to learn the rifle drill complete. I'd never used that rifle in drill before, so I had to learn all of that. I had to learn how to wind the kit properly and make it look smart, and then did the training for 28 days.
Fascinating.
Random, absolutely brilliant. They then had a gap of 2 years where the TV company sat down and thought, what are we going to do next? And they then said, right, we're now going to do it with Bad Lads.
Oh, wow.
Okay, right, here we go. So the first series they did with Bad Lads, I did the first series. I then said, no, I'm not doing the other two. And they did 2 more afterwards without me.
What was the show called again?
The first one was Lads Army.
Lads Army, yeah.
And the second, third and fourth I wasn't involved in, were Bad Lads Army. Basically, they took blokes in. Some of the lads were just naughty.
Yeah.
There was a couple of lads who'd done ABH. The quote from the TV company when we asked was, none of them have been done for GBH, which was comforting. Yeah, thanks for that. But the security team were doing most of the security, were literally lifting them and then taking them away if they started anything. So the Bad Lads, we had a couple of drug dealers, we had a couple who taken without consent, 2 that were done for ABH. 2 of them, they were in a phone box. Somebody had walked past the phone box. One of them thought this bloke had said something, so they came out the phone box and beat him up because they thought he'd said something. And you're just like, what? Bizarre. So Lads Army, then Bad Lads Army, and then I sacked it because by then, when we did Lads Army, the TV company didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
They'd said, right, we'll film whatever's happening, and whatever's happening is happening. And we'll just film it.
It's like an experiment.
Yeah, they said, well, if we miss something, we won't ask you to redo it because the blokes have got to think they're on a training program, not a TV program.
Yeah.
So we very quickly realised that the TV company would come running if we were shouting and screaming, just in case they missed something.
Yeah.
So I was stood on the drill square one day. Because we're all mic'd up, so I just stood on the drill square and started screaming and shouting, yeah, out to the right hand, right hand. TV company come rushing around, they go, what? And I went, nothing, I'm just practicing. Like, oh, shit. They weren't happy about that. So by the time Bad Lads started, the TV company was starting to think, we can. So a couple of times they said, could we redo something here?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's not what you said.
Yeah.
So I thought, by the end of it, they're probably going to be tweaking this a bit. By the end of it, apparently by the second and third series of Bad Lads, they were much more, we need you to shout at this bloke tomorrow because he hasn't been featured. So there was much more control. Whereas the first one, literally, they filmed what we did. So we did a complete training program because they'd given us a training program. They said, here's what we've got. And we went, that's awful. They went, what? That's nothing like a training program. We'll write a training, because three of us were all ex-military instructors.
Right.
So we rewrote the training program for them. They went, you did that quick? And we said, yeah, because we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they said, right, okay. So we did it, and we did things like regimental history, so they had to learn the full regimental history. So we did all the boring stuff, and they filmed everything, church parade, as well as all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Because the lads were doing recruit training for 4 weeks. So we did that one, and then, as I say, we did the Bad Lads one, where some of the lads there, real problem children. Most of them didn't have a father figure.
Right.
At all to look up to when they joined, also as they were growing up in life. So that was a real problem for them. Yeah. One of them, who ended up as a best recruit, his mum had had a couple of children from different fathers and so on, and his mum drank a lot and so on. So he's real problems. Yeah. They came with a lot of baggage as well as the crime stuff.
Yeah.
And
were they still doing the old-fashioned style as well?
Oh yeah, they were still doing 1950s,
1950s
national service.
Yeah.
And the TV company had said to us about 10 days into the first series, they said, this is weird. We said, what do you mean? They said, they're just doing it. And we said, yes, because this is the army way.
Yeah,
And
they
the
were
army-
expecting it to go chaotic.
Yeah, they thought it was going to go left. And we said, the army way is just, that's the line, douche. And for bad lads, that really helped them.
Yeah.
Because it was like, one, there's your line, don't step over it. And two, you want a role model, you've got 3 here. We're going to be smarter than you are. We're going to be doing it better than you are. Your aim is to do it like we do.
Yeah.
And it really did. Massive. You saw some of them. All right, might only have been for those 28 days. They might have then walked out and then gone straight back to being complete whatever.
Yeah.
But for those 28, they were like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we can do
I'd be
this.
interested
Because
to
the
see.
military system kicked in.
Yeah. I assume that in real life that happens a lot too.
Oh, God, yeah.
That lads
Yes.
join, that they've struggled, that they've got chaotic home
Yeah.
lives, that they've been involved in whatever. They get there and you sucked into it.
There is a new series starting about called Soldier, which is watching people, men and women, go through the infantry training centre, because they now allow women into the infantry as well, which is really good. And that will be interesting, because that will show you people arrive, and as they say, it doesn't matter whether you come off a council estate or you're a millionaire's son, we will train you to be a soldier. We'll take you and go, right, that's what we want. We're going to not break you, but we're going to turn you into that.
Yeah.
And this is the way we do it. We do it with this, we do it with this, we do it with this. We do it with drill, because you're all going to work together as a team. We do it with taking you through that muddy pond for a run, because everyone's going through it, and you're going to do this. You're going to do stuff you like, you're going to do stuff you don't like, but you're all doing it. You'll all have the same haircut. You're all going to look the same. And by the end of it, guess what? You're working together. When my father first got commissioned, way back in the 70s, he was working at an army education centre where soldiers would join who couldn't read and write. So they were taught enough to be able to pass military training, and then would join. You don't get people who can't read and write, but you do get people sometimes who are struggling to read and write.
Yeah.
They struggle to have passed numeracy and so on.
Yeah.
But they join the army, and the army or the military says, here's your standard. Here's the structure that's going to support you. This is what we're going to do for you. You're going to do this. You're all going to work together. And suddenly, 20 years later, that person leaves as a warrant officer class 1 with a degree on his pocket and all the rest of it, having done a full military career. Nothing would have happened if they'd done anything else.
Yeah.
But the military, they found somewhere where they really get looked after and they grow with it.
They're transformed.
It's phenomenal what it can do if you put into it as much as you're going to get out. It's phenomenal what it will achieve. It's massive, and it does help take that bloke off the housing estate who's probably going to end up in prison and go, right, guess what, do this and you can make a difference. And you didn't see that in the intelligence corps, because they tended to be brighter when they joined. But certainly I've worked with blokes from other cap badges who say if they hadn't joined, they'd have ended up in Nick somewhere. But they joined, and they're doing it. They're working with me in the Bodyguard and so on, and they've gone full career. Bash.
So then it makes sense that even doing sort of old-fashioned 40s, 50s drill, even only a month of it, like it was bound to have some impact on these kids, wasn't it?
How long that impact lasts for, you never know. But
it'd be interesting to have found that out, like a show a year on, finding out where they were.
we asked, we said, will you do a follow-up show? And the TV company said, if somebody's interested in paying it, because it was an ITV series, so you needed that advertising money paid,
of course.
and you couldn't get that, which was a shame.
What an amazing
we all thought
thing
it would
to
have been
be
interesting.
Yeah, what an amazing thing to be involved with.
It was
like
fun.
Another just string to your bow.
Well, it was that weird thing of, well, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then, the best laugh was I then went back to lecturing, and of course the TV shows were going out, so the students were coming, and the new first years arrived that year. Freshers week and all the rest of it, and we're doing the introductions, and you could hear them go, it is him, no it isn't, yes it is, no it isn't, yes it is, no it isn't. And then one lad came
you
up.
kept it quite close to your chest.
I didn't say anything. I'm not going to stand there and say, ladies and gentlemen, I was on.
You might have seen me on TV.
I'm a TV star. And this one lad came over and he went, excuse me, Mark. I said, yeah. He said, Jim's got a question to ask. I said, well, if Jim's got a question, Jim can come and ask me. So they went, oh. So he went back to Jim, and Jim comes walking over and went, Mark, yep. Were you that sergeant on Lads Army? Yes, I was. Oh, my God. Mark, I will get my work in on time, I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will.
That's so cool. I'm going to see if I can find some clips to
Oh,
share.
you'll find some
Yeah,
clips.
that's awesome. And so, did you get a taste for the show business world? Was
No,
it
I
kind
mean,
of-
one of the lads who did Lads Army decided he was coming out of the army at the time. He decided that's what he wanted to be.
Yeah.
Because he saw we had Kate Thornton. Kate Thornton was doing presenting for us on ITV2, doing a bit more in-depth interviews. He saw what she was doing and he thought, I can do that. This is easy. I can be a TV personality. So he got himself an agent.
Right.
The only difference for that was on the next series, we were still paid the same as we got on the first series, and he was paid shed loads more because he had an agent.
I see.
But he didn't get many more jobs out of it, and he's sacked all that off in the end.
Yeah.
No, I got a couple of stage appearances
Right.
in a theatre company up in Scotland. I was offered a pantomime in Scotland, but it would have been 4 or 5 weeks in Scotland.
At Christmas time.
6 days a week and all the rest of it, with about a day off for Christmas Day, and I just thought, I can't be bothered. No, thanks. So they hadn't written a part; they were going to write a part for me because they went, we've seen you on the stage shows. Can we do it? I said, yeah, and then I thought, no. So a couple of stage shows in Scotland with a small theatre company, which was good fun. An appearance on the Gadget Show, because one of the researchers on the Gadget Show had been a student at York St John, had seen me on the TV and had seen me teaching circuits and thought of me when they needed something to come along and do the job. So she contacted me and she said, can you come and do this? So my job was to basically go, the Gadget Show people were looking at thermal kit, warm kit, these thin layers that you wear like Under Armour and so on, and other names are available. And they wanted me to go over and beast them.
Right.
It was a theoretical beasting because what they did was add flames to make them look like they were being exercised, and I exercised them for about 5 minutes, and they're running around going, oh, this is so hot. Oh, we're really sweating now. This is really hard work. How do you feel? Oh, I'm really hot. And I'm thinking, really? If you wanted me to beast you, I can do, but it wasn't a beasting. It was a pretend beasting to make it look good for them.
Yeah.
But, so that was it. I thought, no, that'll do for me. I spoke to a bloke this week who said, look, if I needed somebody to come in and do some extra work, because he's got into acting, this lad, he said, would you be available? I said, yeah, you give me a shout, I'll turn up and do it. It's not a problem. I worked with a bloke in the Bodyguard who was a TV extra and so on, and he was on, his main bit that he was on was Love Actually, where he sang with Hugh Grant, because he was the police bodyguard for Hugh Grant, and he was on the series with me. Ex-army, got into acting, got himself an agent, and did some TV work.
Right.
But no, it did. It was good fun.
Yeah.
And it gave me an insight as to what's going on.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, do you want to do some more? Yes. But it wasn't sort of like, oh yeah, this is me.
Yeah. And I suppose you've got this second
I'd
career.
already-
This would have been a third career.
Yeah, I was already doing lecturing, so I just thought,
Yeah.
no, this is a bit of fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, yeah.
Amazing, just incredible. And I suppose if we could talk a bit about another TV appearance, but a completely different one altogether. What you're up to now, what you've been your work as a beefeater.
Right, I'm not a beefeater.
Oh, right, okay.
Beefeaters live in the Tower of London. They are the warders of the Tower of London.
Okay.
And they live in the Tower and they work in the Tower. We are members of the now King's Bodyguard of the Yeomen of the Guard. I joined the King's Bodyguard, or the Queen's Bodyguard as it was, in 2011. My first duty was on President Obama's state visit. We provide the ceremonial guard for the sovereign in high-profile events, so investitures, garden parties, Maundy services, garter services, that sort of thing.
Wow.
State visits, state opening of Parliament. We do all of that sort of stuff. The yeoman warders wear the same uniform as us, except we have a cross belt and they don't.
I see.
So, been doing that, as I say, since 2011. And obviously, September of last year, I went on the Thursday, Her Majesty died. I did the Great North Run on the Sunday, and I was on the way back, and we'd been getting emails saying, right, you're going to be all needed, you're on duty, etc., etc. I said, right, when am I needed? Am I needed on Tuesday? And they said, no, we need you Monday morning, because we need 8 people for the first rehearsals, and I need 8 people who are smart and who could do drill, and you're one of them. So I finished the Great North Run, got back to York, booked my ticket to London, booked my hotel for London for Monday night, got changed, went down to London on Monday, did 8 of us did the rehearsals on the Monday in an army barracks. We did rehearsals on the Tuesday in Westminster Hall, and then on the Wednesday we were the first. 4 of the first 4 were on duty when Her Majesty was brought into Westminster Hall, and I was one of the first 4 that took over on the vigil. We then did 24 hours on, 24 hours off for the whole of the time she was lying in state in Westminster Hall.
Stood.
20 minutes stand, off for about an hour and 40, and then another 20 minutes for 24 hours. I, along with 11 others of us, were involved in the procession as well. So we did the rehearsal for the procession at Thursday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, because it's the only time you can get the streets of London closed. So we did the rehearsal. We carried on with the sovereign. The yeoman warders at this point were helping us out. 10 yeoman warders came in each day to help the bodyguard, because there was 24 of us on duty. But obviously, if you take 12 away, there's only 12, so they're going to be doing more. So 10 yeoman warders came in and helped us. So they were on duty with us.
So it wasn't just ceremonial. You were also physically there all the time throughout the
when we came off the vigil, we were in Westminster Hall. We had a rest room where which was obviously lit for the whole 24 hours. So we were trying to get some sleep there, feeding, eating, and everything else. We were there, so you could take your tunic off, take your shoes off, and try and get some sleep. And then an hour and 40 minutes later, you were back on again. So we did that, and then we were bussed back to Windsor Castle, stayed at Windsor Castle, and then back in 24 hours later to do it again. Monday, we were taken off duty, got a quick shave, got us smartened up, and then we marched with Her Majesty from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for the funeral, and then from Westminster Abbey through London to Waterloo Arch, where she was taken into the hearse back to Windsor Castle. As we were about to step off from Westminster Hall back to there, everyone doing things as a team, the Garrison Sergeant Major, who's in charge of the whole ceremonial, came to us and said, "Gents, please stay in step with the bearer party, the guardsmen who are carrying the coffin. They will be in front of you. Please stay in step with them." He said, "Because I'm relying on you to be in step, because I'm taking my step off you." Right. And we said, "Okay, so no pressure. If we get out of step, the main man's out of step." And he said, "But it's not for me." He said, "Because His Majesty and the royal party will be taking their step off me. So if I'm out of step, they're out of step, and it'll be your fault." Right, here we go. So no pressure. You just thought, right. So we marched out with the pipes and drums to Westminster Abbey. We were fallen out from Westminster Abbey during the service. We were then fallen back in around the coffin, around the gun carriage. Her Majesty was brought back onto the gun carriage. We then escorted it through London, as I say, to Waterloo Arch. Her Majesty left. Then we went back to St James's Palace, where we got changed, put our suits back on, and then we went back home. That Monday, because we'd started Sunday morning, I got back home, took the dogs for a walk, and I felt a bit tired.
Wow.
I worked out I'd been awake, other than the odd 20 minutes nap, for about 40 odd hours. So no wonder I was a bit tired. So so we did I was involved in both elements, the vigil and the procession through London. And that was one of those where you just thought, one of the lads was away on holiday and said, "No, I've got to be back for this. This is what we sign up to do. Come back for this." It was a tremendous honour. I mean, it just, superb.
My jaw is dropped.
It was.
I can't imagine what that must have felt like after the career that you've had and the years that you've put in the service, and but also I suppose as well, leaving the army and going away and coming back for such a remarkable occasion.
It was really weird, because all of us, when you join the armed forces, you don't swear an oath to the government or to the country. You swear an oath to the sovereign. So Her Majesty was the person we'd all swore an oath to. And there we were guarding her. And it was a real mix of emotions, obviously, because of that. One time where it got very dusty in there, I think is what my version of events, was because I was stood there on vigil, and you stood there for 20 minutes with your head down, and this lady walked past and said, "Thank you very much for guarding her." And that choked you up a bit. You thought, "Yep, no, I'm fine." And crap. But it's superb. I mean, it was just, it was an honour. It was unique because certainly for all the senior members of the Bodyguard, we will never do that again in our careers. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
And just for a monarch to serve that long,
Yes.
and to hold the sort of integrity and respect and just
massive.
Just relentless class.
Yeah.
For one human being to be able to handle that for
I
so
agree.
long.
I mean, when you can see, she was probably the most photographed person in the world, the most famous person in the world by everybody. Just phenomenal. So yeah, it was unbelievable.
Overwhelming. I can't imagine what
yeah,
that must have felt
grief.
like. And also, I know what it's like when you've again, I'm not comparing these things in the slightest, but practicing your drill, and then you go on a camp and you do a parade or you do something with a band, and you've got an officer there, and suddenly you're nervous, and those nerves kick in.
Well,
everything is
now,
harder.
We were doing it every couple of hours. We were on for 20 minutes, but you knew that there was a live feed in there, and the whole world was watching this live feed. So you knew every time you went on, you've got to do this right. One, you've got to do it right because the world's media is looking at you. But two, you've got to do it right for the boss.
Yeah.
We've got to do this for the boss. And the 12 of us who were on the funeral, before we stepped off, we said, we've got to do this for the boss. We've got to do this right.
The commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and you're there representing.
We've got to do it. Yeah, so it was, unreal.
Wow.
So we finished that, and we came away, everything's settled and all the rest of it. And then obviously planning for the coronation started.
Yeah.
Now, the coronation didn't need as many of us. So what they said was they would pick us from the more longer-serving members of the Bodyguard. So those who've been in the longest, those who were old, basically the older ones.
Yeah.
And from those, they would pick the ones who are not as firm or fit would be in Westminster Abbey. There would be 4 tall blokes around the state coach, and there would be a marching contingent. And I was going to be on the marching contingent. The week before the coronation was the London Marathon. I desperately wanted to run the London Marathon, and I was going to take a charity place. But my family said to me, my sisters and so on, they said, if you run the London Marathon and get injured, we will never speak to you again because you won't be on the coronation. And the reason for that was because my father was on the Queen's coronation in 1953.
Wow.
So I was going to be on the King's coronation. So I thought, right, I've got to. So I can't run the London Marathon. So we did the rehearsals, and we did 2 rehearsals on and off. We then did a full dress rehearsal, 2:00 in the morning, usual thing, because roads are closed. And we marched through, and the coronation route took us through Admiralty Arch, down the Mall, and so on, back in the park. And again, back to that, everyone doing it together.
Yeah.
The soldiers have been practicing for 10 days. We got 3 practices because we should, in theory, know what we're doing, and we're following everyone else, so it's fine. We went through Admiralty Arch, and I got back to the room, and I thought, just check something. I can literally say I've followed in my father's footsteps because he went through the same arch in 1953.
Wow. And that was by chance, was that?
Yeah.
That was just by chance.
it was just a centre arch, and we went through centre arch, and I looked at it and I thought, grief, that's cool. But my dad did get his own back. My father died while I was in Northern Ireland, and he was a guardsman. So his ashes are scattered in the Guards Chapel, which is in Wellington Barracks. So we were in Wellington Barracks waiting to go on duty for the coronation. So I said to the Sergeant Major, I said, look, I'm going to go and pay my respects to my father. And they went, yep, not a problem, no worries. So I went across, and I thought I was just going to go to the gardens because I assumed the chapel would be shut. Yeah. The chapel was open, and inside the chapel is a plaque to my father that we had installed on the wall. So I went and had a chat to the plaque, then went out, went to the gardens, paid my respects to my father, came back. We then stepped off, and it rained, and we got wet. I blame my father. Because in 1953, when he did the Queen's coronation, the 2 things I always remember him saying was, 1, what a great day it was, but 2, how wet it was, because it rained a lot.
Right.
And I think he sat there, and when I went away, he went, go wet his head, will you? Get our own back on him. Why should he get away with it when I didn't? And the rain, the rest of the Bodyguard said, it was your fault. Your dad did that, didn't he? So, yeah. So I'll take that. My father got us rained on.
Wow.
So yeah, but brilliant.
What a full circle,
Yeah,
remarkable moment.
literally, it couldn't have not fallen better, but it was pure accident. But it was just like, oh, this is
That must
this
have
is
been
it.
like the layers of emotion that you must have felt at that
It
event.
was really, really weird. I mean, I did a piece for Look North. Amy Garcia came down and interviewed us, and we walked around the route. And at one point she said, "Do you get emotional about it?" I said, "Yes, of course I do." I said, "But your training covers you for that.
Yeah.
You don't sort of walk along and suddenly burst into tears. Your training goes, right, this is what we've got to do. This is where we're going to, this is where we're going to. I said, you can still enjoy the whole thing, but your training." And she went, "What?"
That's why you were there. That's why you were there, because you were so ingrained into
we can do this. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was phenomenal. But then we finished that, and all the older members of the Bodyguard were all chatting, and we realised now that I have 4 more years left in the Bodyguard, and we've done all the big things now.
Yeah, well, it doesn't.
We're
get
now
much
back
bigger.
to normal duties. There won't be all, unless a massive accident occurs, there won't be anything as big as that for the rest of my career as a bodyguard. So all I've got to do is just keep ticking the boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm now taking over next month as the Sergeant Major of the Bodyguard.
Oh, right.
So I'm going to be moving down to London, living in London. I was going to be living in St James's Palace. I'm actually going to live next door to St James's Palace in Marlborough House. What? And I'm taking over as the Sergeant Major in charge of the Bodyguard for my last 4 years.
As a full-time role, is that?
Yeah, it's 4 days a week.
Wow.
So I do that for 4 days a week and then come home at the weekends. Massively proud of that. Massively proud. I mean, I couldn't be prouder. But it's this odd one, and we touched on the mental health side of it. It's this weird one where I cannot wait, but I'm also the thing that's kept me through all of my life. Well, certainly since I was at Ashford, I love exercise, and I do exercise, and I go running and all the rest of it. And I've always
you
run.
did just slot in there that you wanted to run the marathon. You're still running marathons.
I'm still running marathons. I did the coronation. I did the Queen's funeral. The weekend after I did the funeral, I came back on the Monday. That following weekend, I walked 100k. Then I had a week and a half off, and then we flew to the States, and I did the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C., which wasn't fast because I hadn't had training, because I'd had 10 days where I didn't do much. But I got round it. It's fine. And a beautiful marathon. Absolutely lovely. If anyone wants to run a marathon, Washington, D.C. is stunning because it's in autumn, so it's lots of colours and everything else. Yeah. So I still run marathons. I did 100k the 23rd of last month, 23rd of September. Did the same 100k. That was my 19th one I've done, so I've got to do another one next year to do my 20th. So I'm doing one. I've got to tick those in. So I've always had this thing about running.
Yeah.
And I've then added to it exercise, because I've suddenly realised you actually need to train some of the upper body as well. Personal training does be useful sometimes, because I go, now maybe I'll do some more. So I'm doing lots of training. I also teach an exercise class, and I love teaching exercise classes. I mean, I've taught it since about the year 2000, on and off. Yeah. I mean, the maximum number I had when I was at York St John, on one occasion, I taught 150 people in one circuit class. Yeah. It was just mental. The numbers have obviously gone down lots now. I now teach it at York RI.
Oh, yeah.
And it's brilliant fun. I teach it twice a week, and it's the best fun going. It's a lovely group of people. I was going to stop when I retired from York St John University, but I kept it going because a number of people approached me and said, look, it's really good for our mental health. Will you please keep it going? And I went, oh, all right then. I'm shamed into keeping it going. But I actually think it's good for me as well, because I'm not exercising, but I'm getting something off it, because I'm doing some of that teaching, and we're still bouncing around, and I'm having fun with this group of people who, some of whom have been coming to the class for like 14, 15 years.
Right.
And they absolutely love it. Well, I've got a problem, because when on the 1st of November, I'll be starting in London.
Yeah.
And it's Mondays and Thursdays I teach the class, and I'll be working in London for 4 days.
Yeah.
So I'll be on the way back on Thursday. So I can't teach the class anymore.
Right.
I've asked around for instructors in York. Instructors are either already teaching on a Monday and Thursday, or they don't bother replying because they don't want to know.
Right.
It's a ready-made class. They're going, and I'm now in the situation where I'm going to have to. I've organised some drinks with them in the middle of this month. I'm going to have to sit them down and go, ladies and gentlemen, that's it.
It's going to stop.
And I've got a real problem in my head with that.
Right.
That I don't want them to stop.
Yeah.
But I can't find anyone to keep it going.
Right.
So I'm at that situation where there is no choice really for me. I cannot not do this job in London.
Of course.
That is just like, that's the icing on every cake possible. Yeah. I mean, the role is Messenger Sergeant Major, MSM. My initials, and my dad must have known about this, my initials are Mark Stuart Morris, MSM. So I was destined to do this job, whether I liked it or not, from when I was born. So I've got to do the job. But I want the class to keep going because I understand it's really good for their physical and their mental health. But I can't because there's nobody to take all the kits there and everything else, and I just can't do it. And I have a real problem on that mental side of it. For me, I love exercise and I understand the benefits that exercise gives me. I understand that if I haven't run for a few days, I don't start feeling depressed, but I start to get really... I better get out because if I don't, I'm going to smack something.
Yeah.
So I go and exercise and it's just bang. When I go for a run, it allows me to think, to go through what I've been doing during the day, to switch stuff around, to check things out and so on. Or if I love running first thing in the morning. Sometimes when it's dark, it doesn't matter. It's dark.
Yeah, same. That's
but as it gets light, love running into the light and so on. Fabulous. Yeah. So running, love it. Exercising, exercise doesn't give me the same buzz, but I know I need to do the other stuff, so I do all of that. But then I get that stuff from teaching the class as well. I'm not going to be able to teach a class down in London.
No.
Because I've got to be in a suit and tie every day for this, so I certainly can't chill out and relax. So that's a slight, I wonder how that's going to work. But I'll have a different dynamic, so I should be over that one. But I am not worried, but it's a little bit in the back of my mind saying, well, if you just told the bodyguard to sod off, you could carry on teaching the class. Well, I don't want to do that, but so I'm at that dichotomy of, no, you're going to have to do it, but even now I'm thinking, I've put some of the kit up for sale. I'm thinking, if they don't buy it, I could still find somebody to, maybe I've still got about 5 days, I could still get somebody into tip. I can't. I know I can't. But I'm trying to put off the point of having to say, no, I'm sorry, folks, it's done.
Yeah,
and that's
I
really
make an
annoying.
Observation, and it's with with all due respect and the understanding that I've only known you for a couple of hours, but I can tell how much you care about other people, and you've got all these rules and boundaries and restrictions, but the reality is that you're worried about letting these people down, despite having given them over a decade of training. Nobody would expect that of you.
No,
but you
and I'm sure
they'll
be more than happy to say, you've got to do this.
Yeah,
but it's that.
But that just speaks volumes about the type of person that you are, because it sounds like right from the very beginning that making friends very quickly, travelling, moving, a decorated long service. A remarkable service, and can I say, as we approach the end of this conversation, thank you for your service.
Not a problem.
But also that, despite leaving the armed forces, carrying those standards with you into the education system, and understanding people and what they need to get the best out of them, despite it, being you said. The reason why I think you might have survived that transition from the difficult sort of switch between the career you'd known for your whole life and Civvy Street, which a lot of people don't, is for the same reason why you don't look at your own blisters, because you're so busy making sure everybody else's are all right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it might well be. Yeah, because if you're worried about them, you're not. Yeah. You aren't as concerned about yourself, because you can subsume yourself in the importance of looking after something else. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
And you're worried about the blisters of this class now.
Yeah.
But just hats off to you. But it's time. It's your time. This is what a perfect end to an illustrious career.
I mean, I think some of them thought I was going to be teaching the class until I'm 70.
Yeah.
Which actually, if I hadn't got the job, I probably would have been. Yeah. I'd have probably been coming in a Zimmer frame, still teaching it. But sorry, folks, 4 weeks, 4 years.
Will you miss the city? Are you going to be moving then, or are you going to be?
I am, and I'm staying in York. I will work in London for 4 days. So come back Thursday afternoon.
Brilliant.
Most of the royal families go away on the Friday for the weekends to Windsor and so on. So we tend to be left a bit. So hopefully Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then go back down Sunday evening to start again Monday morning.
Beautiful.
Or if I'm really lucky, catch the first train Monday morning and go down then. So
amazing. And you're doing what you've left, and you've found your way back to where
it's back to that. You join the army as a recruit, get to the top, leave. Join the reserves, work to the top, leave. Join the bodyguard, work to the top, leave. Get an old age pension, die.
But very few, I think, could claim to have completed it as well as you have.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, just absolutely jaw-dropping stuff. I'm really, really grateful that you've told us your story.
Not a problem.
I was going to ask you a load of other questions. I feel like you've completed this interview as well, so I won't take up any more of your time. Unless, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything we haven't talked about?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, and I know it's really important, this mental health, the physical health, and so on. And I said there that, if I haven't been for a run for a few days, I start to get sort of really wound up and all the rest of it. And, and I used to work with a bloke who was like that, and you'd say to him, go for a run. You go for a run and come back in. And I'm like that. I will go for a run and I'll come back, or I'll go to the gym even. Although, as I say, I prefer a run. I'll go to the gym and I'll come back and I'll think, better. And I know it's massively important for my physical health, because at the end of the day, I want to live as long as I can and die as young as I can.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is to keep physically active. It's the age-old story. When you stop using it, that's when you drop dead. So I've got to keep using it. Yeah. But it's massively important, I think, from the mental side of it, because I know it helps me. Yeah, yes, on the exercise, I can sort through stuff that I'm doing, and square things away. I can work things out in my head.
It's a bit like meditation in its own way, isn't it?
But that's my version to find the space or to clear your head.
Yeah.
But it's massively important because it means I'm more relaxed. I sleep better because I'm physically better, so I'm going to be sleep better, so that's going to help my mental side of it. I'm just more prepared in my head if I've been doing some exercise. I think for me, and I only discovered it latter stages, and I didn't link it to mental health, because when I was in the military there was no such stuff like that and all the rest of it. That's just it, you just do stuff, it's not a problem. But I think more and more as I've gone on, I've realised, and certainly when I'm working with clients, in the PT side of it, and working with the courses where you get people into gyms who've never been into gyms before and get them into exercise, you realise just how important it is for that mental side of it, because if that's right, then the physical side works. Or if the physical side works, the mental works. And for me, by being that physical activity, it gets my head in the right space. So I go, right, okay, if I'm having a shit day, and I've had some really shit days in times, and it's so stressful, what do I've got to get rid of this stress. How do I get rid of this stress while still working? Go and do stuff. Go and take yourself away from it. Go and do stuff that you can do. And then you can come back to it and go, right, is there anything I can do to affect that? If there is, then I can do it. If there isn't, what's the use of worrying about it? If that bloke is an idiot and I can't change him, stop worrying about it, because I can't affect that. In the same way, I can't affect if it's going to rain tomorrow when I'm out for a run. What I can do is think, if it's going to rain when I'm out for a run, I better take a waterproof. But I can't stop it raining, so don't worry about it raining. Don't worry about that bloke being an idiot, because he is going to be an idiot. Whether I stand up, sit down, walk out the door, he's still an idiot. So ignore him, because I can't affect him. Fix what I can change, and then I will feel better in myself, because I can change that for me, and that will make me better. He's still an idiot, but he's not going to worry me. I suppose it's compartmentalising it to say, right, I can't do that, affect it. I can do this, I can change this, I can affect this, I can improve this.
It's resilience to all of the other stuff, isn't it? It's like, as good as the run is, and I never thought I'd enjoy running as much as I do. Even once I'd got going, I was like, where are these endorphins then? But it was the bits between the runs that I felt I'm able to handle this a bit better. I'm able to be
it gives you that coping strategy to be able to go, yes,
Yeah.
I'm working with a buffoon, but it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because I can do stuff.
The one thing that I think I do have, and you mentioned rain there, I still am subject to my own sort of. I put barriers up, like, oh, it's wet today. Oh, it's a bit. Oh, I've got up a bit late for this one, and it always strikes me how motivation follows the action. You've got to be in your flow. You've got to get out. You've got to follow the routine. You've got to be disciplined.
One of the best ways I found with that, I joined a running club when I came to York. Because I knew I was going to live in York, I thought, right, I better join a running club so I can meet people.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody in York,
Yeah.
because I'm in an army barracks. I'll join a running club. So I joined this running club, and I started to meet people. And you'd be sat in your home, and it's honking with rain already. And you're thinking, I don't want to go out running tonight. It's raining. Then you think, I better go because they'll be there waiting.
Yeah.
And
Accountability.
they're all in exactly the same position, but they're going, oh, we better go there because Sullivan will be there.
Yeah.
So you rock up and you all go for a run and you feel great.
Yeah.
And you come back. So it's that, again, back to that team thing of, well,
Can't let them down.
I can't let them down. Well, guess what? They're all thinking exactly the same.
Yeah.
It is much worse, and I agree with you. If you're sat at home on your own training, and I do this training for a marathon, and I know I've got to do 6 miles in the morning, and there's nobody else around because it's 5:30 in the morning, and I look out the door and it's freezing cold and it's raining, I just think, I'll do it later on. But you've got to go out. But if there was somebody else out there, you would automatically do it.
Yeah. So
it is
accountability.
much more that accountability of,
Yeah.
well, I always look at it and think, if I don't do this run today, and I'm training for a marathon or half marathon, I'll have wasted the previous 4 weeks of running because I'll have missed this run. That is not a good plan because that's wasting 4 weeks. I better go out and do it because otherwise I'm wasting that and it's going to hurt more on the marathon. Oh, I'll go and do it then. So you do it. And it's back to that, looking at how much I've invested already. Well, if I've invested 4 or 5 weeks in training, why lose that for one run? Oh, go on, go out and do it.
Yeah.
And
So it's a bearing in mind you don't want to lose that progress. It's consistency then, isn't it?
Yeah. It's building. It's that.
Well, to get to
investment
100k, to be doing marathons, into your
66.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't, that's you're only as old as the miles you're pulling out. Let's face it.
I agree.
Our age is based on the number of times we've been around the sun.
Yeah.
But our life expectancy's got to be affected by what we do with those years. Do you know what I mean?
My father died really early,
64,
because he drunk a lot and done very little exercise.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's not happening. No. So, it is. It's back to that. I want to be as old as I can when I die and as young as I can.
Yeah.
And you do that second by doing stuff.
Yeah.
But doing stuff in your head as well. So reading, doing quizzes, doing stuff to keep your brain active as well as physically active, doing stuff so that everything's moving and everything's keeping... Because if you stop it, that's when it dies. So keep your brain active, do quizzes, do all of that sort of stuff, get involved in clubs. When I retired from the university, I had to keep busy doing stuff. So I still do the sports therapy, still do a bit of running, still go down to London Marathon and work for 4 days massaging people, because you've got to keep your mind active. Because if you don't, you lose it all.
Yeah.
And I just, no, I don't want to do that.
I can honestly say I don't think I've ever met anybody who's does as much stuff or who's done as much stuff as you have, sir. Genuinely, this has been a real honour. So just... And how you've delivered that as well. Like I said, normally hour and a half. We're pushing 3 hours, so I'm aware that I've taken up a real
I do
chunky.
apologise.
Please. I honestly just it feels it's genuinely an honour for you to have given me that time.
Not a problem.
I know people are going to get a lot from this. By the way, I didn't want to skip songs. Did you have any songs in mind? Do you want to add to our playlist? If you have anything that means it's something to you, then please do let us know, and I can put it on.
Elton John's your song every time. That or Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely, we'll definitely add them. And I hope that we get to talk again. I'll be keeping track of
anytime. Just give us a shout
of what comes next. But it doesn't seem like you're slowing down anytime soon.
I don't think so. No, I'm not allowed.
So happy retirement, congratulations, but also to the next chapter. This is really exciting, I wish you all the best. Thank you again for your service.
No, thank you.
And until next time, Mark.
Cheers now.
Yes, Mark. What a guy. We hope you enjoyed that conversation. We'd like to thank Mark for his time and wish him well at the next stage of his career. And we'd like to wish you well too, for a happy and prosperous 2024. And whether you're making resolutions or not, try to remember, whatever you do, to keep talking.